of thought. The profit of thought.
What's good, folks? What's going on? Welcome back to another edition of the Profit of Thought series right here on the old YouTube page. I'm your host, X, of course, but y'all know that already. And boy, I got a good show for y'all tonight. Do I have a good show for you folks tonight? I see people starting to file in. What's good? Lady Katz, Lady Ming, Brother Faulkner, Lady Classic. What's going on? I see all the TPOT team in the house. What's good, unicorns? I see y'all, Brother Q Wilson. What's good? Brother Don C in the house. Ray C. What's good, folks? What's up, Young 41? Lady Shiva, what's going on? All right. Here we are. Another Wednesday night and another episode of the Profit of Thought series. And tonight is a Dark X Live. So y'all know we're going to get deep to it. What's up, Sheep Stay Sleep TV, Silent Thriller? What's up, I Quizzle? I Quizzle in the house. Yeah, tonight, this brother really doesn't need too much introduction. We all know who he is, but let me first shout out. What's up, Donnell? Let me shout out my donors because I got a couple donations today. I appreciate that. Y'all know who y'all are because whenever y'all hit me with a donation, I always make sure I hit y'all off with a nice personal email from old X itself. It is greatly appreciated, folks. Everything you send to me, y'all know I recycle and put it back into the old TPOT machine. It is greatly appreciated. And like I said, y'all know who y'all are. I don't have to blast you out because whenever y'all send me something, you know, X in your old personal email and holler at you and talk shit to y'all at the same time. So I appreciate those donations. I really do. So let's get right into it. Like I was saying, this brother needs no introduction. We all know who he is, but he is usually known by his his battle cry. The one and only Obsidian Ali has decided to stop by TPOT. What's good, brother Obsidian?
Hey, what's up, man? How you feeling?
I'm good, man. As you may well know, because you're a man that's on media, that you have been quite the talking point over the past week or so.
I know I had no idea what's going on.
Well, let me get what I got to say off. Let me say what I have to say first, and then we'll get into that. Now, okay. as you know, I listen to you, Obsidian. I listen to your stuff.
Okay.
You're actually one of my most listened to YouTubers. Okay.
Oh, wow. Thanks. Appreciate that.
It's a tight race between you, Brother Valdez, BGS, and Black Ram 313. Y'all right up there. Y'all my top four. Black Ram 313, BGS, Brother Valdez, and you. Now,
okay.
I say that because you you're a frequent guest on the Master Teacher BGS's live stream, right?
Right.
And I know that you and BGS have y'all disagreements about points and about causes and effect and different pathologies and ideologies. I totally respect that, because I like your stuff, but I don't always agree with you. And that's fine. All right. That's what this is for. The real bone that I have with you is the fact that you brought up the master teacher's daughter. Now that I thought crossed the line. Now, one thing that is to have disagreements with a brother. It's one thing to have alternating arguments and different beliefs about, like I said, ideologies and causes and effect. But once you bring it to the point where, you know, you talking about a brother's children or his wife, now it's delving into the personal. And that's the bone that I think not only I have with you, I think other brothers have that bone to pick with you too.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned it. Let's go right there, because for one thing, you know, you're not the only person to suggest that I somehow, you know, took a low blow or hit below the belt. And you know, it's nothing personal. You know, it's you know, to say that I hit below the belt is to say that I have something personal here with regard to Black Gnostic, and it's not personal. My argument is simply this: how can you have a community, you know, when the overwhelming majority? The other day, I talked about this in a string of podcasts that I did regarding the friendly debate between Black Gnostic and myself. How can you have a community when 77% of all Black children now are born out of wedlock? I just want everybody to just sit down and think about this for a moment. Actually think about what I just said. 77% of all Black children in the United States today, in the 21st century, are born out of wedlock. Okay? How can you have any semblance of community when you have a situation like that? Number one. And number two, how is it cool for us to just accept that? Now,
well, I don't believe that we do.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't believe that we do. I'm with you on that. I mean, I'm with you on that, brother. I mean, you're not gonna get no argument from me when you're talking about illegitimacy rate and all that. I mean, you're not gonna get an argument from me on that point. Go ahead.
Yeah, and excuse me. What I was saying was that particular point I brought up to highlight something. The debate that is going on, it's still ongoing between Black Gnostic and myself. I just took a brief break over the past week. I'm going to be coming back with some more, because I have some more things to say with regard to this whole issue and Black Gnostic. The reason why I brought it all up was to highlight something. You know, if you are not addressing that number one point right there, then anything else that you have to say is at best moot. And the simple truth is, we do not discuss this in the Black community. We don't. And anybody who brings it up, we want to attack them. So as far as I'm concerned, if you're not talking about the fact that the number one problem in Black America ain't racism, it's the utter destruction of the Black family, which is really, you know, a nice way of saying that Black men and Black women don't get along. That's it.
Well, that's also a point.
That's it.
That's also a point that I disagree with you on that too, brother. I disagree with you on that. I don't think the biggest problem.
How so? Let me know.
Because I don't believe that the biggest. I mean, it may be one of the problems, but I don't believe that Black women and Black men not getting along is our biggest problem. I think one of our biggest problems is lack of education. I feel like.
What do you mean lack of education? Black men.
I feel like if we case in point, you say that the biggest problem that we have is black men and black women not getting along. Fine. Say black men and black women got along better. You know what would happen, brother Obsidian? There would just be more fucking and more illegitimate kids. That wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't solve anything. I'm telling you. I don't think it would. I don't think okay, fine. We all get along. Now you got more illegitimate kids because you got more fucking, because everybody's getting along. I don't think that would close the financial gap between black folks and other people. I don't think that would build more families as far as black people are concerned. Now, if you bring in more education, because black men and black women can get along all day long, but if you got a dumbass woman and a dumbass man, all you're going to do is create more dumbass kids. So I believe that if black people had a little more education infused into black society, that number one, it wouldn't matter if we got along or not. Because, see, if we were more educated, we'd be less likely to be pumping out babies by people that we're not going to marry. We'd be less likely to make stupid decisions that would fuck up our lives. We would be less.
Hello? Something happened here. Let's see. Brother, are you there? Because I cannot hear you.
Hello.
Okay, go ahead. I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I just don't.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
I just don't believe that us getting along would solve these problems. I don't believe that.
All right, let me respond to the education part.
Go ahead.
Okay. Number one, it's a fact that and we don't talk about this a lot. Not just black women as a group, but black men too, but for differing reasons. The reason why I don't think black women want to talk about it is because it kills a major talking point of theirs about this notion of this great dearth of black men, eligible black men to partner with. In the case of black men, I think we just sheer ignorance. But the reality is that there are more educated black men today in the 21st century than we've ever had in the history of this republic. More black men graduating from college. You know, the graduation rate of young black men is the highest it's ever been. I cite as my sources Howard University and former White House staffer Professor Ivory Tolson. I cite as my source of documentary filmmaker Janks Morton. I mean, both of these guys have covered this issue extensively. Of course, they never get the light of day because they're not saying what black women in general and, you know, the black community overall want to hear. We don't want to hear good news like that. That's just the plain truth. Black men as a group are the highest educated cohort of black men we've ever had. That's a fact. That's number one. Number two, the out of wedlock birth rate for black people is something that is not concentrated among the lesser educated of black people. It's something that can be seen across the socioeconomic spectrum. Now, I will grant you that you see more of it in the working and lower classes in Black America. That's true, but it's not unusual to see highly educated sisters having kids out of wedlock either. So that's something. So this idea that if we just had more education, we would get along more as black men and black women, that's not true. I cite Professor Ralph Richard Banks, who it's 2018 now, 7 years ago, when he released his book, Is Marriage for White People? The Swirling Sisterhood, led by Crystal and Karazin, held him out as the golden child. He says in that book that the very low black marital rate is not something that is a respecter of socioeconomic status. More black men are confirmed bachelors over the age of 40 than any other racial group of men, and that's regardless as to educational or socioeconomic status level. So What I'm saying,
you don't think it would be a benefit. You don't think it would be a benefit if more of us were educated. You don't think that would be a benefit. I mean, we have a lot of people within the ranks of Black society that are educated, but if we had more, that wouldn't be better for Black people.
What I'm saying is that we, both Black men and Black women, are the highest educated cohort of Black Americans we've ever had in our country's history. That's a fact. I mean, you can go to census records and look it all up. I mean, it's just a simple fact of life. And yet we have the lowest marital rates. That's a fact. That's just a plain fact. So my question becomes, how are we going to do anything? Because, a lot of the discussions that the Black Gnostic speaks is of the world. When they talk about these big questions, these big concepts. How are we going to be able to forget about competing against other groups? That's a factor, because the United States is a competitive society, and we're increasingly living in a competitive world. I don't think Black Gnostic would disagree with that. But how are we going to have any type of viability as a society? I'm talking about Black people now. As a society, when only 1 in 4 Black women will marry in their lifetime, when the biggest cohort of confirmed bachelors in the United States, now several decades running, are Black men, when 77% of all Black kids are born out of wedlock, where Black Americans had the highest divorce rate, Black women get divorced higher than any other group of women. How can you have a viable community? See, nobody wants to answer that question.
Yeah, well, I say again, I mean, I'm with you on those aren't impressive numbers. Those aren't impressive numbers, but see, the problem, this is the thing, Brother Obsidian. The thing is this. Now, a lot of brothers within the spectrum of YouTube, and you know that YouTube is like any other community. It's just like any other society. And the problem that I think a lot of brothers have with you is that because you're not a stupid guy, man. I mean, people can say what they want and people can disagree, but we know you're not a stupid guy, okay? And I don't believe that you're just this fucked up guy. But what I do believe, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, I do believe that you have a tendency to come off at times like, you don't like Black people, you're better than particular Black people, and now some of your arguments are sound. I've actually defended you against brothers. I've actually told other brothers that, hey, look, Obsidian's not a dumb guy. I don't agree with him all the time, but he makes good points. I have actually said that myself. All right. But I think where people are taken a little aback with you, Especially the shit with BGS's daughter. I'm not leaving that point yet. Because I still feel like that. I think that was a little out of line, Brother Obsidian. And don't get me wrong, man. Like I said, I listen to you, man. I listen to your stuff. And I don't always agree with the shit you say. But I do agree with you a lot. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't be subscribed to your shit. I don't subscribe to people that I don't listen to. Okay?
Right.
And that's one time that I was actually kind of disappointed in you, Brother Obsidian, because I know you're smart enough to not do that. I know you're smart enough to not bring his daughter into it.
The idea that I hate Black people. I want to address that. So let's keep that on the back burner for a moment, but stick to this current line of questioning about my supposedly hitting Black Gnostic beneath the belt or whatever. First of all, that I never talk about anybody. I never use information that they don't put out themselves, number one. So what I said with regard to Black Gnostic wasn't inaccurate. Nobody charged me with being a liar, number one. And number two, it served to illustrate my point. If you can't even address meaningfully a major problem in Black American society in the 21st century. If you look back over the arc of the 20th century, particularly the first half of the 20th century, when we did have racism as a major problem in Black American life, the Black marital rate was higher than the white marital rate. Now, it was true that we did have a higher out-of-wedlock birth rate than whites. In the year 1960, the Black out-of-wedlock birth rate was around 25%. In white America, it was about 3%. Fast forward to the year 2000, and the number for Black people, shoots up to damn near 70%, almost 3 times that rate. And in the white society, it shoots up, over 10 times that rate. Today, the white out-of-wedlock birth rate is hovering around 40%. So in both cases, it's gone up. But you cannot deny the fact that in Black America, this is a problem. And the fact that nobody in Black America wants to bring that up. I'm looking at Angry Man right now, and he's been on a tear. He's been on a tear.
I don't think that's true, though.
For a minute right now, and he keeps saying, "This is bullshit. This is bullshit. This is bullshit."
But that's not true.
Maintain the family structure without marriage. That's the way it works in America. And Black people understood that.
Obsidian. I don't think that's true, that we don't address that. I talk about that shit on my platform. Other people talk about that shit on their platforms. I don't think. So
name to me. All right. Okay. So name me.
I'm listening.
The notable black voices in mainstream Black America who's talking about this. I'll wait.
What do you mean? Far as what? Illegitimacy and shit like that? Everybody talks about it. Everyone talks about it, brother. Come on, man. Come on. Like I said, you can go to my archives right now. You can go to my archives right now and probably find 5, 6, 7 videos where I talk about baby mamaism.
I'll tell you what we do. I'll tell you what we do.
Rates.
I'll tell you what we do.
Talk about this stuff, man.
It has Ebony talked about it?
Oh, well, we're not talking about places like Ebony. We're talking about right here in the YouTube circle.
Well, hold it. Wait a minute. No disrespect to
and
you,
other brothers.
Disrespect to any of the brothers here on YouTube. No disrespect to any of the sisters out here on YouTube or Black social media, so to speak. My point is that topic simply isn't on the agenda to discuss in mainstream Black society. The Root, the Griot, Very Smart Brothers, Ebony, Essence, Madame Noir, Clutch, none of the major Black platforms, TV One, BET, they don't talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. Let them tell it, racism is the #1 problem facing Black people in the 21st century.
Isn't that why people like us exist? So we can talk about this kind of shit, the shit that they don't talk about in Ebony and Jet and the Root and the Griot. Isn't that why we all decided to come on YouTube so we can talk about this shit? Because
no doubt about it. I'm not disagreeing with you on that point. All I'm saying, Brother Xavier, is that the very fact that the Black community overall don't see upwards of 80% of Black kids being born out of wedlock, and the Black marital rate at all-time lows since United States federal statistics were kept on it in 1890. The fact that we're not ringing the alarm over that says something to me. That's if that doesn't say anything about where we are in Black America, nothing will.
But why? Let me ask you this. But why do you think it is? Do you think it's all? And that's another problem. That's another problem that brothers have with you, is that you have a tendency to come off. Now, maybe I'm wrong about this. you have a tendency to come off like everything that's going on with black people is totally black people's fault. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe in accountability with our black asses too. I talk about accountability, culpability, and responsibility all the time. But you have a tendency to come at things like all the shit that's going on with us is our fault. Is that what you think? The conditions that black people are under, the conditions that black people live within, the parameters that black people have been forced to live under. Do you believe that it is all black people's fault?
Okay, so
no, yes or no, man. Yes or no?
So, well, hold on. Okay, so what I'm talking about right here, right now, the black marital rate or lack thereof, the out of wedlock birth rate, is that something that is solely within the control of black people, or do white people have anything to do with that?
I would say that it's a combination. I would say it's a combination of conditions that have been set up and manufactured and irresponsibility. I would say it's a combination of both. I don't think it's one more so or the other. I think that America in a whole has set black people on a path that has forced them to manufacture these conditions. These conditions are kind of manufactured, okay? And once these conditions are manufactured, black people have a tendency to continue these cycles. Like these cycles have been set, all right? These parameters have been set, and black people have a tendency to not fight against whatever the white power structure has set down before us to hurt us. I think a lot of black people don't use that. They use that as an excuse to be complicit as opposed to a reason to strive. I believe that is what I believe. But I don't believe that it's all black folks' fault. I don't believe that, ghettos are just something that we created on our own. I don't believe that poverty is something that we created on our own. Now, I believe we have a tendency to perpetuate it. I believe that, but I don't believe we created it all on our own. I don't believe we've created the financial straits that we are in all on our own. I just don't believe that. I believe a lot of us are irresponsible. Of course I do. A lot of us perpetuate things. A lot of us cause ourselves to get eaten up by a lion that we've been dropped in a cage with. Yes. Instead of climbing over the fence, we run to the lion's mouth. Yes, I believe that. But I do believe that at times black people have been put in that lion's cage. I do believe that.
Okay, so please explain to me the conditions that white folks set for black people from the year 1890 to the year 1970. Because during that time in American life, so we're looking at 80 years, 8 decades, where black folk, despite real, strictures that white society placed on black folk coming out from slavery. We're talking about Jim Crow. We're talking about the Klan, et cetera, so forth. That didn't stop black people from getting married.
Nope.
It didn't.
But what else did the white power structure and the government do, Brother Obsidian, during the 60s and the 70s? What did they implement? What was implemented?
The government actually tremendously helped black people in the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act. This is 64, 65, 68.
And they also gave them a lot of damn welfare and shit, right?
Well, that's what I said. I said the Great Society programs, those things, and that is a problem. And I've talked about this many times on my show about what I refer to as the welfare mind state. Well, so no doubt, I'm not letting that off the hook, but I am citing a fact that black people were freed from Jim Crow. That's a fact.
Yeah, well, with that.
So I'm trying to understand how black people today in the 21st century are somehow beset by white folks, and that somehow explains why black folks are the cohort of Americans with the lowest marital rate and the highest out of wedlock birth rate. Compared to eight decades.
Well, the birth
compared
rate,
to 8 decades.
Hold up, the birth rate
of black people,
the birth rate and the dire straits that black people
didn't have the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act and things like that, and they were dealing with in your face, out and out racism for 8 decades. That didn't stop them from getting married, though. I'm just trying to understand.
Do you believe that the illegitimate birth rate and the dire straits that some black people are in are not necessarily exclusive, okay? Nor are they necessarily conditions set by two of the same things. Now, or should I say one of the same things? Now, I'm with you. I mean, I think 70, 80% of us being born without no fathers, 70, 80% of us being born to single mothers, I think that's a horrible thing. And I don't think anybody that's black, okay, think that that's a good thing. I don't think anybody, because anybody that believes that is just crazy at this point in time. In 2018, if you think a woman with 6 and 7 and 8 kids by 6 and 7 and 8 daddies is a good thing, you're just stupid if you believe that that is a good thing. I mean, we can pathologize why it is, but this is not a good thing for whatever reason. It's not. I don't have no problem with you there, brother. I don't.
Here's the problem. What we'll do, and going back to Black Nazi, for example, the fact that, his kids are doing well isn't the point. And that's what a lot of black people will do. We'll defend this current state of affairs by saying, well, by looking at the exceptions to the rule. No doubt there are exceptions to the rule. But we have statistical data. We have evidence that tells us that for the rank and file, 77% of black kids born out of wedlock is not a good thing. We have actual data bearing it out.
Well, brother, Obsidian,
and what's fascinating to me is we can get really excited about everything else about Black America except that.
But I don't think anybody doubts, Obsidian, that there are a lot of black people who are in dire straits. I mean, I just talked about this stuff like 3 weeks ago. I had a show called The Power of Poverty. All right. So, I mean, I don't think anybody's surprised with how many black people are doing bad. I mean, I don't think that that's a surprise to anyone, to the tune of like 9 million of us are living at the poverty line or below it. I mean, that's just a statistical fact. But
again, the question of poverty has nothing to do with the black marital rate. It has nothing to do with the out of wedlock birth rate, because again, I've given you evidence showing you. Let's look at black men, for example. The cohort of never married black men holds constant, irrespective of socioeconomic status. I'm citing, Ralph Richard Banks. He wrote a book on this. He's got the evidence and the data in the book. It's not at all unusual to see single moms in the higher echelon. Shonda Rhimes went and adopted kids, and she doesn't have a husband. So I mean, so again, this is something that's not, germane only to the impoverished of Black America. This is a phenomenon that you see throughout Black American society, irrespective of socioeconomic status. And I'm just simply asking, why is that? Why is that in the 21st century? Why?
Well, in Black America, who's getting married the most? Who's getting married the most in Black society? Who are the people getting married the most? Is it poor
people that get married the most in Black society, strangely enough, are the solidly middle to upper middle class.
Exactly. So poor people aren't getting married, right? And why do you think poor people aren't getting married? Why do you think they're not getting married? Why do you think poor people aren't really getting married?
I think there's a number of reasons. I think a big state. I think that the wealth replaced the husband, read father, in the home for the, lower middle class and definitely working class and below Black Americans. I think that's part of the reason. I don't think that's the only reason. But I think there's some other things that go into this too.
Well, you have to understand that is a contributing factor to why a lot of poor people aren't getting married, right? Because
no, I've never disputed that. I've never disputed it. What I'm saying is that there's more to it than just that.
Mm-hmm.
And Black Gnostic, I'm looking at the chat room right now, and Black Gnostic points out something that's true. I don't refute what he says. People getting married of all races are middle classes and educated. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. He's right about that.
Now,
but my point is, so what? I'm talking about Black America. See, that's something else we like to do as Black people.
I'm talking about
as soon as we say something. See, here's the thing with Black folks. As soon as we say something that's touchy or that we don't like, we got to bring in everybody else.
I can't let you do that, brother. I'm not talking. Forget what the chat room is saying. I said Black. Okay.
Right. But I know what you're saying. I'm talking about a tendency that a lot of Black people like to do. As soon as we talk about something that's touchy or doesn't cast us in a good light, we got to automatically bring in everybody else. We got to talk about what's going on in Bosnia. We got to talk about Sweden. I'm like, so what? I'm talking about Black folks.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't really subscribe to the white people do it too shit myself. I don't really subscribe to that. But I mean, when people hear these statistics, this is what you got to understand, Obsidian. Like I said, man, you're not a stupid guy. All right. When people hear these statistics about Black people, about poor people, especially if you're a Black person, of course, your mind is going to go to a place where, hey, look, these people do this too. All right. Everybody's not getting married if they're poor. Everybody's losing jobs. So you know yourself, when white people get a cold, Black people get the flu. So
yes, but Black people
whatever's happening to us
1890 to at least 1930, at least they were still getting married then. So why is that? Why was it that Black folks were getting married in the late 19th through at least the 3 first decades of the 20th century? Why is that?
Because poverty has risen greatly, man, for Black people since then. Poverty has risen greatly, man. The last time I checked.
So you mean the poverty today is great in Black America is greater than it was in the Great Depression?
I would say pretty damn close. What do you think the poverty rate is today? What do you think it is today?
It's nowhere near what it was for Black folks, coming through the 20s into the Great Depression.
Well, what was it? What was it in the Great Depression? What was it?
You had unemployment.
What was the poverty rate during the Great Depression?
You had unemployment for the entire country in a high double-digit figures through much of the 1930s.
Well, we're not talking about the whole country, brother Obsidian.
I mean, you just don't have that today. You just don't.
We're talking about Black people. Remember, you said.
See. The reason. See, this is something else that needs to be examined here. See, my argument is simply this: that in the late 19th through much of the 20th century, Black men and Black women needed each other because you had to really deal with a lot of stuff, not just in terms of whites. That definitely was true. But also because you simply couldn't really be a self-actualized individual without being married back then. Let's take women, for example. Women back then, women couldn't own credit. They couldn't, get, bank loans and things like that without a husband. There were other things that you couldn't do without a husband. And quiet as it's kept, if you didn't have a wife, you didn't, rise as high as you did on the job. The promotions tended to go to men who had families, read a wife and kids. That's just the way it was back then. Post 1970, that changed for both men and women in general, Black men and Black women in particular. So I think a major factor aside from the economic stuff, is an attitudinal shift. Black men and black women don't need each other anymore. We're individuals now. We're free.
Why do you think that is?
And that means that we can be free to be with someone else of another race, which is another highly contested and contentious topic of debate in black social media. I mean, throughout, black social media. I'm talking about going all the way from, Essence and Ebony and The Root and all that, all the way down to, us little folk here on YouTube and Facebook and all the rest. That's a highly contentious, topic. Interracial dating, interracial marriage, swirling on in the rest of it, be it black men or black women. It could be that, or we can, choose to be with a certain segment of folks in Black America. That too is a very highly contentious, the whole colorism nonsense and all the rest of it. All of these things are manifestations of us being free. And I think the reality is that a lot of black men and black women don't need each other and don't want to put up with each other. I think that's one of the main reasons why the black marital rate is so low.
Well, from what I'm looking at the stats now. They are saying that they're coming from 1966 on. That's as far as they're going back. They're saying that back then in 1966, blacks consisted nearly a third of all poor Americans. By 2012, poverty among African Americans had fallen to 27.2%. Now, still more than double the rates among whites, percentage-wise, because remember, our numbers are smaller. Now, you say that poverty has nothing to do with it. I beg to differ, brother, because if you have a community that doesn't have money, if there's no money in a community, that is, what is that going to have people do? That is going to make people rely on the government. And if you rely on the government, you already know that the man is going to be out of the picture. Okay, the man's out of the picture if you're relying on the government. So of course, poor people aren't getting married. Of course, poor people aren't building these great families and building these great societies. Because number one, poor people don't have any political power, and most poor people don't have the greatest of education. And I go back to the education again, because I'm going to harp on that, because I disagree with you, brother Obsidian. I don't think it's us getting along. I think it's lack of education. Do you know that most fourth graders, black fourth graders, can't even read at their own grade level, man? In the fourth grade, most of them, they can't even read at their own grade level. Fourth graders. So when you have those type of people coming into society where they're illiterate, they can't read, they can't write, they can't count, what are these people going to grow into? Are these people going to grow into these great members of society and help build communities and put money into the economy? No, these are going to be the people who are running around, robbing, stealing, breaking in shit. I mean, these are the people. So I really believe, because I've asked this question before of people, and I'm a true believer that education is the great equalizer. I don't think that black people should be getting handouts. I think black people should be getting educational opportunities.
What homes are these fourth graders coming from?
Well, obviously they're coming from homes where people aren't focused on their damn education, and that's a big problem with me too. Because I feel like as black people,
are they coming? Are they coming? Hold on. Are they coming from homes where the mom and dad is both in the home, or are they coming from single parent homes? Baby mama homes.
Well, the last time I looked, close to about 65% of them are coming from single parent homes. Yes, they are. They're coming from baby mama homes, like 2 out of 3, 65%. They're coming out of baby mama homes.
Okay.
Not all of them.
Okay. So wouldn't it make sense that one way to address that is to raise the black marital rate? Because there's a correlation between marital rates and educational attainment. Wouldn't that make sense?
I do believe so, yes. But
all right, so why aren't we talking about that then?
But you have to understand, brother Obsidian, when you have people who are uneducated having children, brother Obsidian, even if the father was there, if the father's illiterate, the mama's illiterate, they get married, the kid's gonna be literate. Is that what you're saying? The kid's gonna be literate with an illiterate mama and an illiterate father.
What I'm saying is that a whole range of social indices don't apply as much to kids that come from two-parent homes than from kids who don't. That's just a plain fact.
Yeah, well, we all know that. I don't disagree with you.
Juvenile delinquency, teenage pregnancy, drug use, prison recidivism rates, the whole Megillah.
I don't disagree with you there, brother Obsidian. I'm there with you. I believe that children need fathers and all that kind of stuff. I mean,
okay. So why aren't we talking about raising the black marital rate? That's the number one thing we can do to help those kids. Since we know that coming from two-parent homes deals with those problems.
Yeah, but you would have to address that too. You would have to address that too. Number one, the younger folks who don't have kids. Because guess what? The women who running around here with 4 and 5 babies by 4 and 5 dudes, now that message falls on deaf ears to them, because see, their lives have already been squandered and wasted. So you can't promulgate marital life on someone who has already destroyed their marital viability. That's already been destroyed. So if we're going to push that on someone, it has to be pushed on young ones. They have to be educated and asked. The people who already got 6 baby daddies, they already gone. They already gone as far as that's
I'm glad you bring that up too, because that's another really interesting point. So here's the thing with both Black Gnostic and myself. We're both lifelong bachelors. As far as I could be wrong about that. Now, I've never married. Black Gnostic, as far as I know, Black Gnostic never married. I could be wrong about that.
How do you know he's a bachelor?
Right. My understanding of listening to him over the past few years, I've always gotten the impression that he never married. I could be wrong about that though.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if I'm right about the both of us here,
mm-hmm.
and I get this question a lot from a lot of people. A lot of people ask me this question. So, and that question is, well, okay, Obsidian, you're talking all these things and all the rest of it. How come you never married? Which is a highly legitimate question.
That was going to be my next question.
That's a legitimate question to ask. Huh?
That was going to be my next question.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said that was going to be my next question to you.
Right. That's a highly legitimate question. And the answer that I give tends to unsettle people.
Mm.
As a matter of fact, the way I always like responding to that question with my answer and my response, because I'm looking to see how they're going to respond to my question. Now, in the debate between Black Gnostic and myself, which, Angry Man played a role in,
mm-hmm.
the last time I was on his channel and Angry Man was there.
Well, I always keep the first hour. I just go ahead and I just kick it with the person. I bring people in, after the first hour. So anyone who has anything to say, they can speak for themselves. I'm not going to speak for the master teacher. I'm not going to speak for my boy Valdez. They're perfectly capable of doing that for themselves, and I will bring them in, in a little bit.
So it was interesting that when I gave my answer in Black Gnostic's Hangout to that question, it was interesting to listen to Angry Man's response. My response to why I never married was very simple. I mean, there's no one particular answer, but here's a real short and sweet one. The women that were available at the time were unattractive. So I said none of the above. Now, Angry Man's response was that wasn't a legitimate reason not to get married. You should still find a Black woman to get married for the sake of the race. I find that fascinating because even Black women themselves don't believe that. For at least the past generation, for the past 3 decades, Black women have been saying there is a shortage of eligible Black men. And so therefore, many Black women have said this, I will not settle for less. Now, you can agree or disagree with them on that point, but it's a statement of fact that this is what a significant portion of Black women have been saying over the past 3 decades.
Mm-hmm.
My point being,
Brother Valdez,
they don't
Brother
even
Valdez
believe,
just wrote in the
they
chat.
don't even believe that it's crucial that they sacrifice their needs in service to the Black collective. So I found it interesting that Angry Man's response was, you need to take one for the team and marry your sister no matter what.
Because Brother Obsidian, you coined the line, water seeks its own level. So is it okay for that level to be sought by women and not by men? Is that what you're saying?
I'm glad you bring that up too, because a lot of people try to say, well, Obsidian's being a hypocrite because he says this all the time, and I do. Water seeks its own level. That's true.
It does sound
I do say
it does.
That's true. So let me address that. Let's assume that's true. That, you know, I'm a 3 and I'm going to attract 3s, and you just going to have to accept that. No, I don't. There's no law that says that I must marry a woman, even if she is on my level. There's no law that says I must do that. I have the right to say no.
Yeah.
As an individual, I have the right to say no.
I agree.
So I did.
I totally agree. I mean, and I'm a married man. I've been married for 17 years. This year will be 17 years that I've been married. And, you know, the woman that I'm married to, I don't even have kids with her. I have kids with someone else. All right. I have kids with someone else. So a thing that I think a lot of us don't understand when it comes to women is that women don't become wifey material after the ring. They become it before it. And I think a lot of times women out there, they're not marriage material. Now, don't get me wrong. All right. I know it's a lot of good women out there, but a lot of them aren't marriage material before the ring. So it's not like they're going to magically become it afterwards. But when we talk about water seeking its own level, again, Brother Obsidian, you say water seeks its own level. So if you met a woman and say you're a 5 or a 6 on the male scale and she's a 9, she doesn't have to say yes to you because you're a 5. She's a 9, so she has the right to turn you down, right? Just like you as a 5 have a right to turn the 3 down, correct?
Right.
All right. So, I mean, when it is kind of hypocritical, because if you're saying that as brothers, we should be able to get, as brothers who are 5s, 6s, or 4s, we should be able to get 9s, but to expect the chick that is a 3 or a 4, she shouldn't expect to get 7s or 8s or whatever.
Hold it. Stop. When have I said that brothers who are 3s, 4s, or 5s should have a right to get sisters who are 8, 9s, and 10s? When have I said this?
No, I'm not saying that you said it, but when you say,
but you said I'm being something of a hypocrite, though.
Yes, exactly. Because
how am I being a hypocrite?
What do you consider yourself as? What do you consider yourself as?
I don't know. I mean, I don't rate myself. I think that's something that, you know, women, the woman or women in question that I'm angling for, that's for them to decide.
Okay, so when you angle for women, what kind of women do you angle for then? Let me ask you that. Who do you go after? If you look for a woman, what's the number? What's the numerical number of the women that you chase?
Oh, for me, well, I mean, my idea of a 10 is different from yours and so forth. So I just say this: beauty is job number 1 for me. I'm like Michelangelo. I'm like the brother who built the Taj Mahal.
But you can't put a number on her. You can't put a number on her. What do you look for when you pursue a woman? If you're dating a woman or trying to date a woman, what number would she have to be for you, Obsidian, to date her?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what.
Would you date a
6
2?
or above?
Okay, 6, right?
6 or above.
So that means you must be a 6 or above, then, right? Are you?
Oh, you talking about the water seeking its own level, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Go ahead.
So that means you must be a 6. If you're chasing 6s or above, if you're not at least a 6, if you're a 2 or a 3, that means you're chasing out of your level. You're chasing out of your water, is right? According to your own phrase that you yourself have coined. You're the only person I've ever heard say that. So you have coined that phrase. So if you're a 3 and you look for 6s or better, that means you're fishing out of your league, right?
Okay.
Right? Right and wrong, right?
No, I think I'm being aspirational. I have aspirations.
Oh God. Oh God.
As an individual, I have aspirations.
So can women be aspirational? Can a woman be a 4 and chase after 7s?
As a matter of fact, that has been the narrative of many Black women over the past 3 decades, is that they're aspirational. They got it going on. They got this degree. They got their their own car. They got their own place, and they're just taking the world by storm. That has been the argument, and nobody had a problem with it.
But
it's interesting that people only have a problem with it when the brother says it now. It's a problem.
That's kind of how it is. Well, let me do some station identification. We here live with Brother Obsidian, the voice of the everyday brother. And I'm about to close the goddamn chat room because I got like 60 folks watching, but I only got 42 damn likes. When you come in the door, hit the damn like button. Y'all know I don't like the watch numbers to outnumber the like numbers. If I got 60 of y'all in here, why the hell can't I have 60 likes? Get the likes up. Please get the likes up. It takes 5 seconds to take your mouse and go over that button and just click it. Just hit a damn button, for Christ's sakes. It's not like I'm telling you to hit my PayPal button, but if you want me to, I'll go ahead and put the link to that in there too. But hit the damn button. Let me go over here and look. Let me get my PayPal. I'm going to put that in the chat too, right before I put the link in, because like I said, the master teacher BGS, the angry man, they can speak for themselves. They don't need me to speak for them. But I say again, and I reiterate, Brother Obsidian, I do believe that you kind of crossed the line, man. You crossed the line when you talked about BGS's daughter, and I'm gonna stick with that. Yeah, I'm kind of sticking with that one, man. I'm sticking with that one, brother. I ain't letting you off the hook with that one. I'm not letting you off the hook with that one. There's the old PayPal link. If you're feeling generous tonight with some of your money, which you're probably not, because you ain't even generous enough to give me a damn like, so I know you ain't gonna give me no money. But like I said, we live here with Brother Obsidian, one of the most hated man on internet right now. And what I'm going to do now, folks, because y'all know I usually take the first hour, and chop it up with the guests. I have them all to myself, but I'm going to put the link in the chat room because I know brothers want to come in and have a few words with Brother Obsidian. We appreciate him coming here. So, boom, there that is. Anybody want to join in? Ask Brother Obsidian some questions. As he likes to say, he's willing to take comments, questions, and death threats if you have any.
Yeah.
If you
comments,
have
suggestions, observations, insults, death threats.
Telling you, I've been listening to you for a while, brother. That's why I'm kind of disappointed. I'm kind of disappointed when you went at the. Let me
say this. Let me say this while you're getting ready to open up the floor.
Yep.
Let me say this while you're getting ready to open up the floor. And I do have to refer back to the chat room. A sister by the name of Kendra Davis asked, so he would have married a fine chick with no character or an average chick with good character? I'm glad you asked that question, Miss Kendra Davis. The answer is yes. I would have married a fine chick that, as you would have said, had no character. I mean, that's kind of extreme. Obviously, I'm not going to marry a demented individual or anything like that. But let's just be honest here. For me personally, as an individual, a plain Jane with a heart of gold doesn't cut the mustard. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. And I'm glad you bring this up because this is something else that I've pointed out on my show over the past few years. And that's this. I don't need to demonize black women as a group, in order to have my own idea of what type of black woman I need to pursue or I would like to be interested in. If you listen to a lot of black women, they tend to demonize certain cohorts of black men. Like, you take this educated lame debate, for example. A lot of black women, take to demonizing those guys, as a justification for why they got with the type of guys that they got with. Like, I don't need to demonize black women in general because I'm into a particular type of black woman. There are many good black women out there. I'll be the first to say that. I just don't want to see them get naked. That's all it means. That's all it means.
I don't think brothers
as an individual.
I don't think
that's all it means.
Much problem with that. I mean, because we all are allowed to have our preferences now. I mean, I
argue that black men aren't allowed to have their preferences. I think black women definitely are allowed to have their preferences. It's black men who aren't allowed to have their preferences.
Yeah, well, on that, I totally disagree, because I mean, I tell brothers all the time, because I talk to young brothers. I hire young brothers, and I hire brothers straight from the hood, and I talk to them, and I would never encourage them to be with somebody that they thought was less than, or whatever the case may be. Oh, they're saying that the link ain't working. All right, I got you, brother Valdez. I'll send it to your email. I always have this problem, man, with my damn links, man. I can never, for some reason, they don't work out of the chat. And I don't know why. It just will not work. Yeah, I mean, I would never encourage brothers to be with some baby mama, or I mean, I would never encourage brothers to do that shit ever. All right.
Well, I mean, it's laudable that you do what you do with regard to young black men and whatnot. That's laudable, definitely. But I think it's also fair to say that you're in the relative minority. You may disagree with that, but I think you may be in the relative minority in that respect. I mean, black men, in the eyes of many black women, black men aren't, supposed to have their own preferences and whatnot. And if they're in the position to act on those preferences, a lot of black women get upset about that. And I mean, if you look at me personally, and I've talked about this numerous times on my channel, I related a story about, high school prom and whatnot, and how, my own family, really got upset because I refused to go out with the like four, I call them the four homely sisters, the four, homely girls that they tried to, push on me to choose among to take on my prom. And I said none of the above. And they really got upset over that.
Well, I think,
in the eyes of a lot of black women, black men are supposed to fall on a sword.
Hey, what's up, brother X, Professor X?
What's good, BJ Allen D? You always the only person that can get in, man. You must got some fucking magical computer or some shit, man.
I always do it from my phone.
Everybody else, you always got to email it. I don't know. Maybe it's just my ghetto shit, man. I don't know. It's probably my ghetto setup, man. It's probably what it is. But Brother Valdez has joined us. What's good, Brother Valdez?
What's going on, bro? What's good with you,
man? We here live with Brother Obsidian, of course. I know you got some questions for him.
Yeah. Here's my thing, because I made the suggestion, on the hangout that we were on, that Obsidian pick a woman, that's decent and have a family. And, he pretty much laughed me out of the room when I made the suggestion. Here's my question. Is the black family, would you agree, Obsidian, because you've just been talking about it this whole hour, is the black family in crisis?
Yes.
Okay. So would you agree that there are certain things in life you would consider to be a luxury?
Yes.
Okay. So the reason why I made this suggestion is because you can have two scenarios. You can have a scenario where your group or your race is pretty much good, meaning they're prospering. You look at the Jewish community. The Jewish community frowns upon Jewish men dating shikskas, which is non-Jewish women.
Mm-hmm.
They don't trip too hard about it now because they're good, but they frown upon that because they know going outside of that is going to water down and diminish their culture. Okay. So I would say that them out of everybody has the luxury to base their dating and whatever on, something that really in essence is a luxury, which means just, oh, well, I'm going to hold out until I get the exact thing that I want. That's a luxury. Okay. That's a luxury. The reason why I made that suggestion is because when you start talking about the crisis of the Black family,
yes,
you being a intelligent, eligible male, correct?
Well, whether I'm eligible or not, people will debate, and some would even question whether I'm intelligent or not. But I see your point. Go ahead.
Well, what I'm saying is, I mean, you already know the point that I'm getting to. You're logical. There used to be a time where they had arranged marriages for very specific purposes. Now, if we were in a society where Black people really had it together somewhat as far as organization, would you or would you not agree that there would come a mandate that all of the men marry a woman?
No, I would disagree with that, Valdez. And the reason why is because arranged marriages, and you're right to point this out, in terms of world history, arranged marriage has been more or less the norm, particularly in the upper classes and things like that. We all know about kings and queens, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. That all being said, in the United States, one of the big steps away from the old world was getting away from arranged marriages. In the United States, women in particular are brought up to select their own mates. So we've never had a system of arranged marriages here in the United States. We've never had it.
Of course not. By design. But here's where the issue is. We've never had that. But if we can sit back and notice that there is a problem that continues to persist, and I'm basing this upon what your statements. I'm basing this upon what you're saying because I don't believe that this is the biggest issue in the community. Okay. I'm basing this on your statements. So based on your statements, if the biggest problem is the fact that we have a low marital rate and we don't have intact families, the same way that China has a population problem, they actually instituted a law where you're not allowed to have but so many children. Am I wrong about that?
I'm sorry. Say that again, please.
In China, because of their population problem, they're overpopulated. They've actually instituted something where you can't just keep having kids.
Right. The one child policy. Yeah.
The one child policy. Okay. So here's my thing. When you have a society that gets into a crisis for whatever reason, you kind of toss out the luxuries. It's like a man who has Honda money, but he wants to freaking drive a Lamborghini. You can't do that. Like if you're in a situation where, and let's be honest, when we start talking about these women, I've seen a lot of the women. I'm not saying that you've done this, but I've seen a lot of the women that guys post. These women don't exist outside of the modeling world and entertainment. The women that are walking around out here are average at best.
Okay,
that's the reality of it.
Well, actually, they will be. If you want to talk about Black women, they will be far below the average, and I've talked about this for numerous reasons. But to address your point about China, number one, it's a communist society, so you're trying to compare apples to oranges. We're a free market, capitalist society that's representative government and things like the human rights and all that. So that's number one. That's the first problem. The second problem is that even communist China doesn't adhere to the one child policy anymore. That was in the 1970s going into the 80s. They've long stopped that policy. So I do see your point. But I just want to point those facts out. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
We appear to be a free market society, because here's the thing that you mentioned earlier, and the biggest problem, you know, y'all went back and forth about the biggest problem in the Black community. The biggest problem in the Black community, and the reason why you have so many out of wedlock children, and the reason why you have a low marital rate, is because of the simple fact that you cannot maintain a family structure without resources.
Okay.
Exactly. People are broke.
You cannot. And the thing about it is, when you look at the society, especially if you make comparisons to other groups of people, which I do, you look at American society, and you look at this struggle that has gone on between white people and Black people for so long. And what you'll notice is that white people in this country have been given the tools necessary to create and maintain intact family units. And despite that, they still have they're still in a crisis of their own. Because if you look at the fact that you put out there about there being a what was it, 70, how many, what was the percentage of out of wedlock births amongst Blacks?
72.
It has been revised.
72.
It is now 77.
Okay, 70 is 77, and the out of wedlock birth rate for white people is 27, I believe. But here's the thing.
No, it's actually around, hovering around 40%.
It's 40%. Okay. Here's the thing. You're talking about 77% of almost 40 million Blacks, as opposed to 40% of almost 200 million whites.
Right.
So if I were to ask a person, what's a bigger problem? 77% of one group that are murderers, or 40% of another group that are murderers? There's more murderers on one side. So you got to ask yourself, if you sit here and you put these two side by side, is this really a race problem, or is this just a Western society problem?
Well, I mean, if you're somebody that's inclined to think, you know, as a globalist, if you will, like a Black Gnostic speaks, you'll say this is a Western society problem, and there's legitimate debate to be had there, because there is, you know, evidence, and you just pointed it out, that, you know, out of wedlock births is something that's not just solely limited to Black America. You see it in white America, Hispanic America, even Asian Americans is a much lower rate. But even among Asian Americans now, we're starting to see it. Again, much lower rate, but we're starting to see it there. So you can make a legitimate case that it's not a Black thing, it's a Western world thing or a global thing, what have you. Okay, fair enough.
It's not, because here's the thing. Here's the thing. Let me just say this. It's not because of the simple fact that, you know, it's been said many times, and you know as well as I know, because I've done videos about it. You've done videos about it. 42% of Black men don't even have children.
That's correct.
Exactly.
So it's not like
not only don't have children, they're single and don't have children.
Single and don't have children.
That's a fact.
Okay.
Right.
So here's the issue. The issue is a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing. And the cultural thing is that, and I've done videos about this numerous times, what's going on is you have women, you have a group of women, you have a large percentage of women that are having children with a small percentage of the men.
Yep.
Meaning you have women who are having...
That's been empirically proven at this point. It's been empirically proven.
Exactly. That has been proven. Now here's the thing. I'll take it a step further. Why is this? The reason why this is because, and this is the biggest problem for Black people in America. The biggest problem for Black people in America is that we have systematic policies that are put in place under the guise of different agendas in order to keep Black people in a certain position, because they are trying to consolidate wealth amongst a certain group of people. Plus, they want to keep Black people in a certain position because they actually profit from lower income urban areas who constantly get pushed through the revolving door that we call the criminal justice system. This is where the problem, these policies is where the problem is coming in with Black people. The reason why you have so many chicks not giving a shit how many dudes they have kids by is because it's more profitable for them to have children by multiple dudes than to get married to one guy and have children by that one guy. That's why
I don't disagree with you.
That's why you have.
I don't disagree with you about the welfare mind state. We're in lockstep agreement on that. And again, there's been all kinds of empirical evidence bearing this out, and policy wonks and all that. Been talking about this for decades. So I agree with you on that. What's fascinating to me about these type of discussions is how much time and energy we will devote to these larger, almost Leviathan type of, external forces. And we give absolutely no credence to something that is a hallmark of Western society, which is freedom of choice.
That's because
could it be that these black women, let's use what you just said a moment ago, and you mentioned the Jewish society. So I'm gonna before I go to the black women part, let me respond to what you said about Jews. It's true. I mean, there's an estimated 15 million Jews worldwide. And here in the United States, they make up, if that, 3% of the total American population, very small group. And within Jewish circles, there is real concern about the existence of the Jewish race if the out marriage rate that you mentioned continues to remain as high as it is. You talked about Jewish men in particular marrying out, shishkas and that sort of thing. And it's true, it is. However, what you fail to mention is that while it may not be as high as Jewish men, Jewish women marry out at a very high rate. Both black Jewish men and Jewish women are marrying non-Jewish people at very high. When I say very high rates, I'm talking about well over 50%. So in the Jewish community, there is a very real concern that if these trends continue, that there's a very real risk that there won't be a Jewish race, at least in the United States, anymore. Well, so I just wanted to point that out. Bringing it back to the point. I'm sorry.
It's not surprising, and the reason why is because the black community is the canary in the coal mine. Whatever is affecting us is ultimately going to end up affecting the entire United States, because we don't live in a bubble. So any outside stimuli that is affecting us is going to affect the rest of the environment or the rest of the ecosystem at some point. And this is the reason why America is falling right now, because you cannot levy policies on one particular group in your nation and think it's not going to affect the other nations. Now, I know that there's a lot of points that there's a lot of facts that I know you'll agree with. But where we keep continuing to have the disagreement is why certain things are going on. You have seemed to make it abundantly clear that the reason why black people commit crime, engage in the behavior that they engage in, is merely choice. And I refuse to believe that it's merely choice.
I wouldn't say merely choice. I would say choice is a big part of it, but I wouldn't say merely choice. I would also say that a lot of it comes from a lack of values and inculcating values. That brings us back round robin to the out of wedlock birth rate and the baby mama situation, lack of dads and things like that. That's also been empirically proven. If you look at prison population rates, the offenders overwhelmingly come from homes where dad ain't there, baby mama's there, and there's just a lack of values. Black Gnostic would bang the whole thing about poverty, but that seems to suggest that to be poor means that you don't have any character. To be poor means that you don't have any values, and there's empirical evidence that speaks to the contrary.
Let me ask you this, brother Obsidian. Do you think that poverty? Do you think that poverty contributes to crime at all? Do you think that is a factor?
I think poverty does contribute to crime. If we're talking about larceny, if we're talking about theft, sure, it definitely contributes to that. I mean, that's a question of you just trying to survive and eat. How does poverty contribute to violence, though? Homicide.
It contributes. For example, it contributes to violence because if you rob somebody and they fight back, you might end up killing them. Or some people have a fragile mind state. You understand what I'm saying? If you're in conditions, if you're in overwhelming, crushing poverty, some people snap. Some people are willing. If you're walking around and your bills aren't paid and you're struggling and you're doing bad, you're much more likely to get into an argument with somebody on the bus than you would if you had your shit taken care of. You know, that's human psychology.
Poverty is stressful. Poverty is stressful.
So how do we explain how criminologists has found, using the Black community as an example, criminologists have found that a major source of homicide, you know, for example, stems from young Black men, because killers do tend to be young. Young Black men are having disagreements and arguments with other young Black men, and don't have the inculcation of middle-class bourgeois values, among them being the resolution of conflict nonviolently.
Well, here's the thing, and you know this, Obsidian. In the history of the world, not just in America, who was more prone to have a discussion rather than a fist fight? The educated. If you live in poverty and you're raised by a single mother, you're not going to be taught problem solving skills. You're not going to be taught conflict resolution. Your idea of conflict resolution is punching somebody in the face.
There's one thing that we can say about present day Black American society, and we all agree that the majority of Black children now being born out of wedlock. But there's one thing we can say for certain, is that Black women, those for whom this applies, single black moms, as a group, I'm not talking about the notable exceptions, as a group, they have utterly failed in inculcating middle-class bourgeois values to their children, especially the males.
That's true, but at the same time, it's not all on them. It's also.
I've been joined by Brother Cerulean Gray. What's good, Brother Cerulean?
Well, greetings, esteemed Prophet Xavier and esteemed brethren.
Pull the trigger.
Let me ask you this: who manufactured the single Black mother?
I'm sorry.
How is single motherhood manufactured?
I'm sorry. Say that again, please.
How was single motherhood manufactured?
I don't understand what you mean by manufactured.
How is single parentage manufactured?
Are you saying made?
How is it manufactured? How is it orchestrated?
Orchestrated?
How is single parenthood orchestrated?
Orchestrated by who?
Well, one, orchestrated by certain think tanks, one of which you had on your video by the name of Shelby Steele, who works for the Hoover Institute. Hoover, who actually was considered the worst president in United States history for...
actually, that would be Carter.
No, actually, Carter was one of the best presidents that you had. But
how so?
Let's see, bring down national debt, getting us out of a war. I mean, there's a whole...
I'm sorry. Say that again, please.
Preventing a war, getting you out of
preventing a war with who?
Well, he staved off the Middle East war for, his entire presidency.
Who were we going to war with in the Middle East in the 1970s?
In the 1970s, we're already on the precipice of war with Iraq and Iran in the 70s.
I'm sorry. Say that again, please.
I said we were already on the precipice of war with Iraq and Iran in the 70s. What do you think the Iran-Contras was about after Carter?
No, we weren't. We weren't on the edge of going to war with Iran. No, we weren't.
Actually, we were. Why do you think under Reagan we, boosted up the Iran and the Iraqi Contras and the war in the South America that was going on?
Okay, who are we going to war with in South America?
Contraband.
Who are we going to war with in South America?
I mean, you don't know about the Cuban Missile Crisis?
The Cuban Missile Crisis happened in 1962.
What was still happening in Cuba after 1962?
Castro remained in power.
Castro remained in power while other governments around Cuba, in order to boost our empire, were destabilized, which is why you have things the way that they are in places.
I'm trying to understand what this had. I argue. You said that Hoover, President Herbert Hoover, you said that President Herbert Hoover was the worst president in American history.
Yeah, he was.
That's what you said. And my response to that was that Jimmy Carter, in my opinion, the worst president. And you said, no, Jimmy Carter was a much better president. I said, all right, so explain to me how he was a much better president. Your response was that he kept us out of war. And I said, war with who? And I'm still trying to figure out who were we going to war with.
What happened after President Carter?
I'm sorry? Say again?
What happened after President Carter?
What happened after President Carter?
After President Carter, it's quite simple.
What happened after President Carter is irrelevant. You said
it's not irrelevant.
What happened after Herbert Hoover?
Because if we directly invade a country after the end of President Carter, who was preventing us from going into the country to take its resources and setting up a new extension to the empire, then what does that tell you? That Jimmy Carter is actually a quite better president than Herbert Hoover.
On what metric? You're talking about he was a much better president when he was no longer president.
Let's see. I mean, we could talk about how he returned the Panama Canal, opened U.S. interest in Havana. I mean, we could talk about all that, but he's the reason why we have Guantanamo Bay. Our esteemed Jimmy Carter.
Okay. Anyway, let me respond
but you had Shelby Steele talking.
Let me respond to something that was said in the chat room. Brother Xavier, I want to respond to something that was said in the chat room relating to the current discussion. Brother by the name of Kevin Samuels brought up some interesting points that I'd like to respond to, if I may. He said that claiming, He said claiming. I'm going to try to find his actual words because I don't want to misquote him. Where is it?
Well, Brother Samuels can hop on. Because Brother Samuels always welcome on TPO.
Kevin Samuels says the following. This is what Kevin Samuels says. He said, talking about yours truly, claiming he held out seems like an excuse for not doing something he would likely have failed at. Easier to stay single and childless while sounding principled than risk failing as being judged. And Ming Nicole says bingo. Kevin Samuels continues. It's likely he knew he didn't have what it took to be a husband or parent, and that's fine, but not in line with his talking points. So I like to respond to Kevin Samuels, if I may. I find it interesting that he can make this, back of the envelope type of assessment about yours truly, when, there were at least 6 black women in my life who felt completely differently than he did. Like I said, I relayed my prom story experience. There was 4 women right there that I turned down flat. They obviously saw something in me that Kevin Samuels didn't. That's number 1. Number 2, I turned down 2 marriage proposals from black women in my life. And on top of that, I've had quite a few black women tell me that, I was the guy they should have had their children with. So there's a clear disconnect between Kevin Samuels on one side and a goodly number of black women in my own life on the other. So I'll respectfully go with their judgment over his. It seems to me.
Let me ask you this.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You said you're a lifelong bachelor, right? And you said that the reason why that you're not married or had children.
I said a reason.
Okay. So, well, is it the only reason that you're not married because you couldn't find that woman that was that whatever you're looking for? Is that the reason why you're not married, or did you just decide, hey, I'm going to be a bachelor till I'm dead?
Well, again, as an individual, I have a right to determine the trajectory of my life, whatever that may be, for myself. I don't see myself as kind of being plugged into this blackboard collective that I have to do things in service of the collective. I do things in service of my own particular interests, wants, desires, hopes, dreams, fears, etc. as an individual. That's the American way.
And there it is right there. I'm so glad you said that. How can we're talking about the crisis of the black community. how are the black community? How would the black community be able to bring anything together? Let's say, for argument's sake, every single black person in the black community had the same exact ideology that you have.
Yes.
Same exact ideology. And I don't mean ideology. I don't mean ideology in the sense of they want to decide to be a bachelor if they're not able to get exactly what they want. I mean same ideology as in I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want, because that's literally what you just said. You just said it in a much more articulate way. Do you realize that there are black people who engage in the drug trade that do it just because they fucking want to? There are black people who decide to be ratchet just because they want to. Right now we have an entire culture, and it's Western culture. That's why you see all of these problems going on with other races, Asians, Arabs, when they come over to this country and they start to engage in Western culture. You start to see this behavior. It's the fuck everybody else, I'm gonna do me attitude. And see, here's the thing. See, I wanted to ask you this question because I know the other fellas are going to ask you questions. I just want to ask you this one last question because I don't want to hog it or anything like that. But you brought up the 60s.
Yeah.
Now, here's my question. You obviously read the stats on the 60s when it comes to crime or anything like that. Would you say that the 60s was the most catastrophic time in American history in reference to crime?
I absolutely would. I mean, according to all of the data and the indices, crime shot up like a rocket in the 1960s going into the 1970s. And I agree with you. I think the 60s is I think we're still, as a society, we're still trying to get a handle on what the 60s meant. And there was so many very important things that happened culturally, legally, socially, technologically, that went down that was so jarring and shocking that I think we're still trying to understand it, nearly 5 decades away from it.
Let me ask you this question. I understand it perfectly, but let me ask you this question. What would you say the reason, other than the statistics, what would you say the reasons were, the reasons for it shooting up the way it did? Or better yet, what was the reasons that it shot up the way it did? And would you say that it was so catastrophic that the country was on the verge of falling because of it?
Very good question. And since Cerulean seems to want to discuss them, I'll cite him as a source. Shelby Steele talks about this. He, in a number of books that he's written in media appearances that he's made. Shelby Steele argues that the single biggest thing that happened in the 1960s that directly speaks to your question, Valdez, is that America lost its moral high ground. He's speaking in terms of race, and that certainly is true. Black, white America, if you will, had the stain and the sin of slavery, and then compounded on top of that Jim Crow, or if you will, in today's parlance, white supremacy, if you will. No doubt about that. And I would add to Steele's thesis that it lost its moral authority with regard to Vietnam, particularly President Johnson, and then carrying over into President Nixon. And of course, in the case of Nixon, you had the Watergate affair. And, so there was this sense that the powers that be, that are leaders in American life, couldn't be trusted. They were, their mendacity had no parallel in American memory, and that we began tossing out. Because of that, we began tossing out. We threw out the baby with the bathwater. We just didn't trust anything. Matter of fact, back in the 60s, they had a saying, you shouldn't believe anybody over the age of 30. And the whole idea of question authority and all that. Those ideas permeated the period, and if you study criminologists who study what happened with the crime waves of the 1960s and 70s, they attributed to the breakdown of bourgeois American culture and what became the counterculture. And that's what happened. We threw out everything associated with bourgeois value.
I would actually go as far as saying that Shelby Steele is full of shit.
Yeah, she is. And let me get it real quick. Let me get it real quick, Cerulli. Let me get it. You could have it.
I want to get Brother Samuels in here too, because he did address Brother Samuels.
Yeah, I got you. That's an interesting explanation, and it goes right along with the narrative that most American historians, economists, all of them would have you believe, but it's complete and utter bullshit. And I'm gonna tell you why. We live in a country that, had the horrific act of slavery, but after slavery, during Reconstruction, Black people have always participated in American culture. We have a high percentage of Black people who constantly enlist in the military, fight for this country. We fought in every war,
Vietnam.
especially in Vietnam. We fought in all of these wars. Despite all of that, we still had to deal with Jim Crow. We still had to deal with all of these different things. And what happened in the 60s is it reached its peak. It reached its boiling point. And what ended up happening
the race riots of that nature. That's true.
Yeah, this country was on the verge of revolution, plain and simple. And what Lyndon Johnson decided to do with his nefarious ass was throw Black people a bone. But he said, you know what? I'm going to throw them a bone, but I'm going to give them a little something added with more. So what he did was he definitely helped institute the welfare state. He the same year that we got the Civil Rights Act and the Voters' Rights Act, we also got the implementation of a little organization called the Law Enforcement Assistance Administration. And this particular organization, the entire point of this organization was to increase the police state or create the police state that we live in currently. Okay. Now this was targeted at lower income urban areas because for some odd reason, exactly. And that's how they do it. They put Black people and impoverished people in this coded language. Okay. Now, here you have an organization. Here you have an organization that they were allotted like $10 million by Congress in 1965. By the time you get to 1973, they had been given $850 million to create all of these different programs. They created like 80,000 crime control projects. Now, this is what, yeah, exactly. This is what funds all these different organizations, ATF, DEA, all of these different things. But the funny thing about it is all of these programs, it would be one thing if this was for the concern of the entire country, but it wasn't. It was aimed at a particular group of people. Now, the dysfunction, you can't take if you took animals in the animal kingdom and you start putting sanctions on one group and you start affecting them, and anybody that's a biologist will tell you, all you gotta do is fuck with one little thing in an environment and it's gonna fuck with the species that live in that environment. And that's what has happened in America. And when you look at the dysfunction that has come out of that, there's no possible way that anybody can ignore these policies, the way they police Black people, the way that we are funneled through the court system, the judicial system, the child support system, the freaking prison industrial complex. This is big business. This is an entire industry that was created for the purpose of policing Black people so that they won't revolt. Because when they saw what happened during the 60s in the civil rights movement, they realized, you know what? These Black people know that they are owed their due, And if we don't give them something, they're gonna tear this country down. So he said, okay, we'll give them something, but just in case they try it again, we're gonna make sure we put the things in place and lay the groundwork so that they can never do it again.
And feminize the men.
These are the systematic things that I always talk about, and the things that I'm saying that you ignore.
I want to
Well,
get.
yeah, I mean, I have what some of the things that Shelby Steele.
Hold on a second. I want to get. Hold on, Brother Cerulean. I want to get Brother Samuels in here because he addressed Brother Samuels directly, and I want Brother Samuels to be able to retort.
Gentlemen, good evening. Hey, everybody.
Oh, greetings, esteemed
What's
Kevin.
good, Brother
Samuels?
Hey, what's going on, Kevin? How you feeling?
I'm good, man. To respond to the point you made, you're right. I put it out there. Obviously, that's not something I can possibly know. It's an observation, and it doesn't go anything against your experience, the amount of women who may have wanted to marry you, such and so forth. But I also think it's a more of a minor point. I like to, if we can, ask a couple of things. One, sure. I thought Cerulean had a really good point, and I would like to, if we can, get to the point where we have a discussion and we follow up with questions and go more than just one question deep before we go to a different point. Can we go about 3 levels deep? Like the question Cerulean asked was, how are single Black mothers or how are single mothers manufactured? And let's go down that. And I cede my time to Cerulean after we answer that question.
Okay, Brother Cerulean.
Well, yeah. Well,
and then we're gonna go to Brother Faulkner because I know he want to get in here.
I'm ceding that question to Obsidian to answer what Cerulean asked, and then see can we go a little bit further back between those guys, because I'm sure there's going to be a back and forth. Cerulean's talking point, I just like to kind of get back on that because sure, I think we had something good. Go ahead.
Sure. Taking Cerulean's question at face value, his question implies. See, this is the problem that I have with his question. His question implies that Black women themselves have no agency whatsoever. That they are just mindless marionettes. That they're kind of like Manchurian candidates that have to kind of follow a set type of programming.
Well, let me ask you this: if someone else dictated the terms of your freedom, are you truly free? But let me ask you this. Well, I'm not even going to ask you this. This is more of like a statement. Black people as a collective don't have any agency. I will make that statement. You want to know why Black people don't have any agency? It's because you're not a monolith. Every other group that actually has agency, like the ones that you continue to compare us to, like the Asians, the Jews, and what have you, those people have agency. Why? Because they think like a monolith. Why do they think like a monolith? Because they put race, and they put culture, and they put nationality before their Americanism. And that is the reason why
actually I would challenge that assertion.
Agency is actually a community property. It's not an individual property that you have. It's something that is upheld by a community. And because Black people are not monolithic, we therefore do not have agency.
That's an assertion. That's not a fact.
No,
I would also.
You want to know how I know? This is how it's a fact. Hold on. This is how it's a fact. This is how it's a fact.
I'll let you talk, man. Let me respond to what you said.
Let me respond to what you said. Own money.
Can you respond to what you said?
Let him finish his point. Let him finish his point, Brother Obsidian. Then you can respond. He's addressing you. Then you can respond. Go ahead, Brother Cerulean.
Do Black people print their own money?
In the United States? No.
And how can you dare say that Black people have agency? Asians print their own money? Yes. Yes, they print their own money from their countries of origin, which competes with the U.S. dollar. Jews, do they print their own money? Yes, Israel prints its own money, which competes with the U.S. dollar. Do Mexicans? Yes, they have pesos. They print their own money, which
with the American dollar. It does, really?
Indeed, it does.
Okay, so what's the exchange rate?
In fact, it's more competitive with the Swiss franc and the euro than it is with the American
dollar. What's the exchange rate?
It's 1 for 1, much like the Swiss franc. The Swiss franc is 1 for 1 with the U.S. dollar.
Okay, so let me respond to what you were saying about agency. So again, it's interesting when these discussions, and I think that really gets to the nub of this whole debate. because, and going back to Shelby Steele, the point that he was making is that, you know, freedom is not only is freedom a very new thing for Black people, but freedom is also a very scary thing for Black people. It's new and it's scary. And it's scary because in his argument, and I think he makes a lot of good points, it's scary because it's such a departure from what Black folks are used to. Take the idea of Black leaders, so to speak. I mean, this is the year that marks the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King, for example. Long considered a Black leader, so to speak. And you know that very idea speaks to a kind of collective thinking. And you know, when we get to a point when we no longer need Black leaders, that's a point where we're no longer, you know, that monolith that Cerulean talks about. I actually challenge his argument or his assertion about Black people aren't monolithic. I mean, our voting patterns certainly show that. I mean, actually, Black people, look at the past two. You look at the Barack Obama era in particular. Our general voting patterns over the past 3-4 decades in general, the Obama period in particular, you know, Black people vote Democratic, you know, into the 90% range, and in the case of Barack Obama, it was almost 100%. That's a fact.
Well, let's examine that. So, voting democratically, that's actually relatively a new thing. It's only been new since probably about 1971 is the last time Black folks were going to vote democratically. You want to know why? Because a Republican declared war on Black people, i.e. through the war on drugs, and that was coming from the Nixon UPC. John Ehrlichman, who said that the Nixon cabinet had two enemies, the anti-war, otherwise known as they labeled the hippies, and Black people specifically. Now, the interesting thing about Shelby Steele is that he actually is a senior fellow along with Thomas Sowell at said institute, which governs the policies that are put out against Black people, like gentrification, for instance. In fact, Herbert Hoover opposed the federal anti-lynching laws. In fact, he created the Herbert Hoover Institute for the sole purpose so that whites and Blacks never come into contact with one another. It was actually under his administration in which redlining was the most aggressive. Promoted hyper-individualism, corporatism, privatization of industry, in which he dubbed the free markets, which really weren't free because they were federally backed. Anything that needs to be federally backed cannot be considered a free market. So,
so in you saying that, I just want to jump in here. And you're saying that you would disagree with Barack Obama intervening to the tune of $700 billion to bail out Wall Street banks and Motown. You would disagree with that? Okay, all right.
For a private organization to get $750 billion all in one swoop from the federal government, which is taxpayer money, is an example of how free markets are really free.
I agree 100% with you. Now, see that, Cerulean? We actually agree on something. Everybody, write this down and dope this right here today.
That's only going to be.
Agree on
that's going to be the only time.
100%.
That's going to be the only time tonight.
And secondly, Shelby Steele called people like Michael Eric Dyson, mere plague. You know, he's preaching hyper individualism and self reliance. He said they should be preaching positive, good faith. Basically, a false sense of hope that one day things will change for the better for Black people. Just stop being involved in white affairs. These are all subjective terms really used to browbeat Negro masses with the false idea that Negroes can bootstrap themselves out of poverty that American society has generationally imposed on Negroes without any changes in the policies that created that poverty. That now, that really is continued to be imposed upon us. And Hoover Institute is one of those policy makers, considering the fact that they did get a sizable amount of donations from a political action committee known as ALEC for their recommendation for gentrification and how to better cut up the black community. He called blacks beings of entitlement, which I find highly, I mean, it's just unintelligible. He says that the KKK would never have a message of such ill content of entitlement that would weaken their position. When the reality is the KKK was created on the premise that they were entitled because they were white. And therefore, the KKK.
Interesting that you bring up the KKK because I want to jump in here.
And therefore,
so
I'm bringing up the KKK because Shelby Steele brought that up. So,
right.
in other words,
I want to follow up on that KKK.
So in other words, what I'm saying is that the KKK must be self-defeatist by nature, or maybe Shelby Steele is alluding to the idea that blacks' pursuit of justice, fairness, and the sharing of the immense wealth which we've been locked out of is defeatist. So
okay.
Let
me follow up on the Klan point, because in your discussion of Herbert Hoover.
Well, hold on. First and foremost, get the damn likes up, folks. Y'all know I hate when the damn watch numbers outnumber the like numbers. Y'all know I don't like that shit. I hate when the watch. Yeah, I need to at least have the damn watch number match the like number, for Christ's sakes. Jesus, hit the damn button and hit that PayPal link that my friend Char Will is so kind to have posted for me, because I can't get it to work for some reason. I guess it's the damn ghetto ghost. We live here with brother Obsidian Ali, and the brothers are giving him some Q&A, and it's actually a good show. So feel free to hit the like button and hit that PayPal link and drop a few coins in the bucket. It would be greatly appreciated. And make sure you tune in tomorrow at 9:30. Unicorn 4. What? Yeah, I want black?
I want to
carry on. And I want to let Brother Faulkner get in too, man. After you go, because I know you want to get in Brother Faulkner and also Brother BJ Allen D.
Of course, I got to get in because these coughs are becoming, this coughing spell is becoming kind of
I hear it. So once I guess he's gonna retort and answer the point, and then you can go ahead. And I know you want to jump on too, right, Brother BJ?
Right.
All right, so we're gonna go. Actually, we'll go ahead and let Brother Obsidian finish his point, and then we'll go Brother Faulkner, and then Brother BJ Allen G. You can jump on.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Cerulean a question, since he seems intent on, questioning the veracity of Shelby Steele via his associate, basically guilt by association, the Hoover Institution, talking about Herbert Hoover, etc., and so forth. All right, fair enough. So my question to Cerulean is, what is his view of Woodrow Wilson? Because Woodrow Wilson actually fostered, he didn't create it, but he definitely fostered the second incarnation of the Ku Klux Klan in his White House. He actually had a viewing and a showing, a filming of the 1915 D.W. Griffith's film Birth of a Nation. That film, propagandized the Ku Klux Klan. The Klan marched down Pennsylvania Avenue right in front of the White House. Woodrow Wilson had gone on record quite a few times in making what we would today recognize as just outright racist statements with regard to black folk. He did this as a sitting president. So I want to know what he thinks of Woodrow Wilson in relation to who.
Yeah, Woodrow Wilson was a, he was a bad president as well. I mean, he's the reason why there is a personal tax, or direct taxes on your income, which is directly against the 16th Amendment. Herbert Hoover, I would actually say, is in fact even worse. In fact, it was Herbert Hoover that actually encouraged Southern Democrats to absorb the Republican Party to push blacks out, because at the time, under Herbert Hoover, blacks had actually a majority Republican Party. In fact, in 1928, blacks put forth the first anti-lynching law proposal that was supposed to be federally backed. He was the president that vetoed it. In fact, it was vetoed. It went vetoed until JFK. So it wasn't until JFK was actually president that that bill was actually ratified. So what does that tell you about the previous presidents? That they were all racist. They were all, basically pro-white. In fact, Herbert Hoover did it more aggressively than Woodrow Wilson, which is why he goes down in history as the worst president. That's why the poor shanty tent towns are named Hooverville and not Woodrowvilles.
Okay, let me do one more follow up.
And in fact, Herbert Hoover was actually endorsed.
One more follow up question.
In fact, Herbert Hoover was also Herbert Hoover was also endorsed by the KKK, like your current president Donald J. Trump. But let's talk about something else that Shelby Steele actually said. He said,
hold on a second. I want to follow up. I want to do a follow up question. So, in light of, because we both talked about previous presidents of the early part of the 20th century, fair enough. So I want to ask you this in light of all that, and I've been thinking about this. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to be doing a podcast on it very soon. So, the 44th president of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama Jr., got almost 100% of the black vote, and that includes black conservatives like Armstrong Williams and General Colin Powell. Okay, he was elected twice with the help of white America. What do you say about that?
What I say about that is that white folks believed a great deal in Barack Obama more so than blacks.
More so than blacks, even though black folk voted for Barack Obama, proportionately speaking, more so than whites.
It doesn't matter if black folks voted for him or not. Who flipped the bill for his campaign?
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
I said it doesn't matter if black folks voted for him or not. Who flipped the bill for his campaign?
No, it does matter who voted.
Was it black folks that flipped the bill for his campaigns, or was it white folks?
No. The votes do matter. So you're trying to argue that the only people that matter are the people who pay
the votes.
That's not
the votes
true.
are secondary. The votes are secondary.
No, the votes do matter.
Campaign
votes do matter. If the only thing that mattered was money, H. Ross Perot would have been the 42nd president of the United States.
No, he wouldn't. It would still be George Bush.
You want to jump in here, Brother Faulkner?
Hey, money talks, bullshit walks. I mean,
man.
But you gotta
look at
that while money is important, no doubt, votes do matter.
In fact,
guess what?
In fact, it was
how would you get his name out there if there's no advertising?
Again, money does matter. I'm not arguing that money has no place in politics.
I mean, guess what? That's ridiculous. If the powers that be says you're not going to be in office, guess what's going to happen?
No.
You're not going to be in office.
But votes matter. See,
they matter, but on a local scale.
This goes back to what I'm saying with regard to Shelby Steele. See, Barack Obama, and I say this as somebody who is a pretty strong critic of Obama. I'm not saying this as somebody
it's the same thing when it's and I love you, Cerulean. I really do. But I gotta debunk you a little bit, about a lot of the things where you were talking about crime. Guess what? A lot of crime in white society, guess what it has done? It's swept under the rug.
Indeed,
especially since you got more people of the Caucasian persuasion than blacks.
Okay, so let me get this straight.
They're taught this shit in college. We have Loyola College in my district. They wouldn't even give us names when they found contraband, illegal substances such as PCP, cocaine, heroin in college dorms. Can you take this? Okay, give me a name so we can arrest them. Oh, we just found it. Then guess what? Don't call us. We're here to solve crime.
So let me ask you this. So the black homicide rate, this is black men killing other black men for the most part. The black homicide rate being 8 times that of whites is really a function of white folks juking the stats.
Okay.
Now we gotta also look at this. We gotta look at this for a minute. Where do most black people live? In the urban environment or the Midwest?
Chicago is in the Midwest.
So it's basically urbanized, right?
But you asked me, do black people live in the urban environment or in the Midwest? My response was Chicago is in the Midwest.
You were referring to the rural Midwest.
Midwest, but is it an urban setting?
Yes, it is. But that's just it. Your question is
I'm gonna expand on the question that I gave you. I'll take the hit for that. In other words, Is it because of urbanization? Because we have people sitting and piling on top of each other? Because we don't have the same basically access to things as others?
Uh-huh. Okay.
Because resources are stretched out? Come
Okay.
on, man. We gotta remember this. They're not putting emphasis on education in the urban environment. When you have cities can't even get together $10 million for education, but they could build a $250 million juvenile facility for incarcerating you.
Brother Obsidian believes that we have enough education already.
We don't have enough education. We don't even have enough trades.
I didn't say
He's a
we had
trade for
enough. I never
himself.
said that. I never
You
said
said
we had
that
enough.
you said that we are some
I
of the
said that
there's more
I
educated
challenge.
black men
I
and black
challenge.
women now than it's ever been. You did say that,
Right.
right?
That's what I said. I challenge the idea that the problem is that black people aren't educated enough. And I responded by saying that this is true for both black men and black women. I'm not saying it's at equal rates. What I'm saying is that today in the 21st century, going to black men first, there are more black men going to and graduating from college than we've ever had in the history of our republic. That's a
But you
fact.
gotta realize this. Education and being an intellectual are two different things. I
Mm-hmm.
can regurgitate information, but can I put it in functional everyday use?
Mm-hmm.
That's the secret.
It's interesting how we keep moving the goalposts here. I find that fascinating.
No, we
Well,
still kicking field goals
One
from the
thing,
60s.
Australian, is that I never
Goalposts never
actually
move. That's the kicker.
one thing I never moved the goalpost. I'm actually debunking everything that Shelby Still has said. Is wasn't that the thing that
Well,
you
you
said?
haven't
Oh well,
debunked anything
you
he
got to
said.
debunk
He said Shelby Steele said what, and what I'm talking about here is the individual. I mean,
it.
this
Oh, it's
whole
the individual.
question about manufacturing single motherhood in Black America,
would
again,
you still
it
have
elides the role of personal agency.
would you still haven't answered that question? Who manufactures the baby mamaism that you
I'm
keep
saying
talking
that
about?
Black women themselves have made that choice for themselves.
Well,
But if I make it, who's making it more? Who's actually making it
acceptable?
more appealing not to be married?
Yeah.
If you're
I'm
subsidizing
sorry.
making kids out of wedlock, who's doing that?
Now, can
I
we
mean,
argue
that's a
about
real simple line
incentives?
of logic
Sure, we can
that
argue about
continues
incentives.
to
We can
evade it.
argue about incentivizing behavior and whatnot. I get no argument from me on that. But what we seem to want to do in Black America is we never want to look at individual choice, and that runs counter. It's antithetical to what America is all about. It's about
I have
individual.
to
No.
look at individual.
You're
individual
mistaken
choice.
because we actually do talk about individual choice, but when we're talking about the manufacturing of a
Okay, so
societal illness,
when do you talk
it
about
is not an
individual choice,
individual.
Willie?
It is not.
When
It's
have you
not based
talked
on
about individual choice?
individual choice.
But when have
When
you
you have
talked
an
about
overhaul
individual
of a
choice?
vehicle, do you go back to the car shop or do you go to the manufacturer?
Mm-hmm.
I don't
But see, here's
understand how
the
that
thing.
relates to our
Here-
In other
here-
to the
here's
words,
discussion.
Because
and let me clear it out. In other words, if you have a defective product, and I like the quote Cerulean on this, do you go back to the store or do you take it back to the
So you're
manufacturer?
saying that Black women are inherently defective?
If you're having an issue with single motherhood and you're having policies put in place to basically nurture and incubate this fuckery, who do you blame? Because guess what? You wouldn't have to worry about single motherhood if the government actually put policies into place to bring back and strengthen the family, would you?
Yeah. See, the biggest problem actually is the
I'm
fact
not.
that
I'm not. But
black folks have
to,
not
to
had
respond to Brother Faulkner
uninterrupted.
real quick, I wouldn't want to put into place policies to quote unquote strengthen the Black family. See, my argument is that it's something we don't want to admit in Black America. The Black marital rate is where it naturally should be. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. See, I believe that in the past, and I talked about this earlier, Black folk, Black women, and Black men needed each other. We had to put up with each other. We couldn't go outside of Black America and have a different experience.
But why?
Whatever that experience may be.
That's
we had to deal
that-
with each other.
That's not accurate. That's
But
not
let me
accurate.
ask you
No,
this.
it is
Let
accurate.
me ask you this.
No,
one,
it's
No,
Obsidian.
very
it isn't
accurate.
accurate. It
But
isn't
let me ask you
accurate.
this, Obsidian.
No, it is accurate. Look at look at the black male
You're-
out marriage rate, for example.
Obsidian.
And you just talked about this
Obsidian.
earlier, Valdez, with
Obsidian.
Jewish folks.
Obsidian, you're projecting. That's not accurate.
What am I projecting? What am I projecting?
What did you
Well,
just
let
say?
me- let-
You said black
let
people.
me ask you
You
this,
said, hold on,
Obsidian.
let me get this in here. You said that black people had to put up with each other, but they hated each other.
which is lies.
You're
I didn't say they hated
projecting.
each other.
That's not.
I
That's
didn't
not.
say I didn't say black folk hate each other.
Well, you said that they had to put up with each other. That's not the case.
Yeah,
They-
in
they
the
may have-
past they did.
They may have been segregated. They may have been segregated to where they could not deal with other races of people. But to this day, black men still marry black women more than outside of their race. So
That's
that
true.
tells you
You're right.
that tell in that now past performance,
to the tune of like
Is-
85% somewhere in there.
and
Well,
as
yeah,
we
I mean,
all
actually,
know, when it comes
we
to
are actually the least. We are actually the least group to marry outside of our race.
exactly.
And when you
That's
when you
true.
measure it against
You're right.
all other data, when
Exactly.
you measure it
When
against
you
all
measure
other
against
data,
other races,
Asian,
that's true.
So here's
But
the
see, but that doesn't
Asian
tell us.
women and white
but
men
that doesn't
marry
tell
out
us
at
why.
a rate of more than
That
six
doesn't
times
tell
the
us
amount
why,
of
though.
black
That
men
tells us the
marrying
end
out,
result.
or black women. For
But that doesn't tell us why.
No, what it
That
does
doesn't tell
is
us why.
no, what it does is it gives us what it does is it actually gives us a control for the experiment. And basically, if you sit down and you look at the numbers and you look at the behavior and you look at what's going on, I'll cite Occam's razor. Whatever's the most common answer is usually going to be the right one. The reason why black men still marry black women at a higher rate than women of other races is because we like black women. That's the reality of it.
That is one plausible answer. I'll concede that. That is one
That's the
plausible
most.
answer.
That's the most.
I have another.
That's the most.
plausible-
That's the
if
most
you want to
logical
talk about
answer.
parsimony, I have another plausible answer.
Go ahead.
I posit, and here I'm going to cite Tom Likas. I
Uh-huh.
posit that a lot of black men deal with black women is because they can't afford to do any better.
No, see, hold on. See,
Whoa, hold up.
hold on.
You said-
Whoa,
for a
God
second,
damn it, bro.
Hold on for a second. Let me get this. Now, Obsidian, you already know that I'm also a fan of Tom Likas. I've listened to a great deal of his radio shows.
Right.
The problem is, just like we encountered the issue with MGTOW and men's rights, there are certain caveats, there are certain things that are specific to the black community that do not exist in the white community. When you start talking about what white men can afford. See,
Okay.
white men, they fall under the category of being able to afford a specific type of woman because of the simple fact that white men have always had resources, and resources has always been the defining factor for white men. Resources have never been the defining factor for black men. That's why that
It's
argument
interesting that you
doesn't
bring up white men, because I didn't say anything about white men. You did. I was talking about
You
black
said
men.
No, actually, what you said was the reason why black men still deal with black women is because they can't afford to do any, and I'm going to say quote unquote better, really alluding
Exactly.
to
And
you're already putting other groups of women on a pedestal over your own group.
and see, here's the thing.
I
You
didn't say
didn't
anything
say
about putting
you
you on a
didn't
pedestal.
hold
I
on.
didn't say that at all.
Hold on, but here's the thing, Obsidian. You didn't say you
Then
did
what
not
do you mean
say
by better?
you did not say white men, but the moment that you invoke Tom Likas, you're crossing over into a different category, which is white men.
Thank you.
Because the thing that
Why,
Tom
why am I
Likas
crossing
is
over? Hold it. How is
because-
white? What does white men have to do with
what is Tom Likas? What is Tom Likas's audience? What's his audience predominantly?
Okay, what does Tom Likas' audience have to do with what I'm saying?
Come on, don't
I'm
deflect.
talking about Tom Likas himself,
Don't
not his audience.
deflect. Don't deflect. What is Tom Likas's predominant audience? You made a point that Tom Likas made. Now, when he made his point, which audience was he speaking to? Which
What
audience
does
was
that
he
have to
speaking
do with
to?
what he said about black men?
Because he's not black. He does
Because he's not black. He's not black, and
So
he
what?
doesn't. What do you mean? So what?
So what?
Your experience. Hold on. Your experience. Let me ask you this. Was your father as a Marine, was his experience the same as a Navy man's experience?
It can be.
But was it?
Oh, come on.
I don't know. I mean, I never asked him that question.
We're talking about, okay,
Well,
here's the thing.
What I find funny is that whenever we say something about white people, you jump in front of the onslaught for white people, but then when you bring up a white person who you quoted and we want to challenge that, oh well, now what's white people got to do with it? So you're saying that it's okay for white people to speak on our behalf, but it's not okay for us to address the things that they speak on our behalf about.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have a problem with that, civilian, if you were actually questioning what Tom Leykis said. But we're talking about Tom Leykis.
I am questioning. Hold on.
We're talking about white men in general. We're not actually addressing what he actually said.
Hold on, guys. Someone who's always saying, "I'm not worried about what white people say. I'm worried about black people because I'm black." But you steady run back to quote white people.
Hold on, because hold on, y'all, because this is what's occurring right now. I asked him a very legitimate question that he does not want to answer, and he's deflecting, and it's working.
He haven't answered like 6 questions.
So I'm gonna go back to it. You said you invoked Tom Leykis' name. I didn't bring up Tom Leykis. You did. You said the reason Tom Leykis said the reason why black men deal with the women they deal with is because they can't afford to do better. Now, the reason why I said this applies to white men is because Tom Leykis is trying to understand a black man's struggle from a white man's eyes. It's like trying to understand a poor man's struggle from a rich man's eyes. They're two entirely different things. Okay. White men.
Let's actually unroll. Let's actually unfurl what Tom Leykis said, and then we can go from there.
Go ahead.
So Tom Leykis, his argument is,
I know the exact joint that he said it. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I know the exact radio show where he said it. Go ahead.
But everybody else may not know it, so I just want to roll this out.
All right, go ahead.
Tom Leykis' argument is that the rank and file black man does not have the money, power, or fame to avail himself to the higher echelons of American women of any race.
He doesn't. He doesn't.
And that therefore they have to take what they can get, more or less. He then further says, if you look at those black men who do have a measure of money, power, or fame, you immediately notice that they are with women who do not typify the rank and file black woman. That's his argument.
Okay. But here's the problem with his
argument. And I think his argument is
hold on. Because I've been getting some, I'm checking, I'm having to look at my PayPal, and I've been getting some donations coming in. So I got to thank the folks, good looking y'all, you know, because y'all know I always like to thank y'all personally, and the donations have been coming in. So I just want to say thank you, brothers and sisters. Thank you. Carry on.
Pass the collection.
Here's the thing. Tom Leykis' argument is not a solid argument because he is making this assessment about black men from the outside looking in, and the assessment he's making does not apply to black men completely. And the reason why is because you know as well as I do that there are women out here that are black women that will get with Ray Ray and Pookie, and Ray Ray and Pookie ain't got shit. Right, but dick, hard dick, and bubble gum. This you have two entirely different cultures that we see. The problem with us in America is we constantly think that we are truly a melting pot, and we're not. There are little nuances of each of our cultures that are diametrically different. Okay. When it comes to white men, I remember watching Breaking All the Rules with Jamie Foxx, where the guy was trying to dump the white woman he was with. And she told him, you can't dump me. You're just a nondescript white man without me to define you. White men have always had to buy the women that they want. Black men have not always had to do that. So it's two different things. So when you look at, you would make a better argument of black men getting with certain black women because they have low self-esteem than you would having the argument that they don't have enough money.
Well, I mean, self-esteem for men and money, there is a correlation. Would you agree with that?
But you got to realize something that black men could do that most white men couldn't for decades.
Well,
most black men are just wanted because of their physicality, not because of their earning potential.
Exactly. And that's why that argument with
Well,
Tom
I mean,
Likas.
we're making assertions here. We haven't actually surveyed. And to be fair, because you bring up a point about Tom Likas. To be fair,
I'm gonna just tell you factually. I could have 5 cents in my pocket.
We're all kind of taking shots in the dark here. But I think that there is something to be said for what he says. As imperfect as it may be, I think there's something to be said for.
Tom Likas was talking to white men. He wasn't talking to black men. He was taking a survey on black men. So you cannot use his assessment because he's not a black man.
He doesn't like Tom Likas for all of it. Like when it comes to the statements that Tom Likas makes, when he speaks on particular issues that just involve men, it's just dealing with men's situation in America, in the Western world, he's dead on. But when he goes into explanations about the reason why black men do this, the reason why black men do that, he's taking shots in the dark because he can never fully understand what it means to be a black man or the type of things that black men have to go through. You understand?
All right, so let me ask you guys this. All right. So I'm going to concede that point. So let me ask you this, since we're talking about Shelby Steele. What if Shelby Steele said the exact same thing? Would we accept it from him then?
What if Shelby Steele said the exact same thing?
Yes. If Shelby Steele said the exact same thing that we just talked about with regard to Tom Likas about black men, if he said it, would we then accept it coming from a black man?
Well, now you're dealing with hypotheticals.
Yeah.
I do know this. Going back to Shelby Steele, has Shelby Steele said that exact same thing? Actually, I think he has never said the exact same thing. In fact, one of the things that Shelby Steele also said that black people were trying to injure the moral authority of American society.
Well, the thing with Shelby, first of all, just like Cerulean said, Shelby still wouldn't make a statement like that because being a black man, he understands that it doesn't.
He's a mockingbird for white capital.
Yeah, like he can't. He's not going to make an assessment like that because of the simple fact that one, that's not really his arena of expertise, and two, even black men in those positions like Thomas Sowell, individuals like that, they're smart enough to know that black men do not fall under the same category as white men when it comes to elitism. When you look at white men have always gained everything that they've gained through money and power, and the reason why is because they have had free reign over industry. They've had free reign over the free marketplace. They've not only been able to make the money and make their fortunes, but they've actually been able to consolidate their wealth by using laws and policies and things of that nature. Black men have not had those tools. So black men have used the tools that were available to them to get women, which is to have what you would call swag or more sexual prowess or things of that nature. So black men kind of fall under.
Let me ask the panel this question. So because we've been having this is a really interesting discussion. I've been enjoying it. So let me ask you all this question. Okay, I want to use an example that all of you will know to illustrate a point. So we know that black men over the age of 40 for better part of 2 decades now, according to U.S. Census figures. We know that black men aged 40 and over are America's largest cohort of bachelors. This is a complete turnaround from where it was only a century ago. A century ago, circa 1918, black men were the most married in fact. Okay, so let me ask you all this question. Alan Roger Curry is a name all of you will recognize, all of you will know.
Notorious ARC.
He too, like me, presumably like Black Gnostic, I don't know for certain, but presumably like him, and like so many other black men in American life, he too is a confirmed bachelor, never married, no kids. By all accounts, solid middle class upbringing, college graduate, successful businessman, eligible bachelor, some would say. Why do you think he never married?
Do you want me to answer that truthfully?
That was
Why
a
run
question.
down? Why run down and fuck one cow? You can walk down and fuck them all.
Well, and I'll give you a better answer. Well, not a better answer, but a more to the point answer. But it's the same answer that Charles Faulkner just said. Maybe because he liked fucking,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe he likes fucking more than one woman and not being tied down to one woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But as I stated before, if you make assertions about the race being in dire straits and being in a catastrophic place in the world, you kind of give up those luxuries of just fucking any and everything that you can. Like that's what you do. That's what you do in a position of abundance, not in a position of scarcity.
So I just want to make sure we're all clear on this. So
Well, me, I don't really have a problem with a brother being a bachelor. I know some. All right, I know some brothers who are like in their 40s, like me, and they don't have any children. They're not married to anybody. They solidly middle class. Shit, some of them make way more money than my black ass do. And yeah, so I mean, I don't have a problem with that. But at the same time, if you're a person who is in that position, like yourself, brother Obsidian, I assume you make a pretty decent living. You can't then turn around and say, you can't turn around and then say, when you're not a person who is actually infusing anything into said community, turn around and say, oh, well, the community's screwed up, the community's not right, people don't have values and all this kind of shit. Because see, you're one of those people who have, quote unquote, kind of got away from said community, from said society. And I think that that's the real crux of the problem that brothers have with you, is that you're one of those brothers who don't have children, all right, never married. And like I said, you probably make a decent living, but you're the guy sitting on the mountain saying, hey, y'all don't have values. Y'all don't have families. Y'all don't have this. Y'all don't have that. But at the same time, neither do you. Now, I say that I'm not saying that you're contributing to whatever's going on within Black society. You may not be contributing to it on the negative side, but you're also not contributing to it on the positive side either, because you're not building a family, you're not building in the community, you're not developing those said things that you talk about on your podcast. You're not participating in any of those things that you're saying that there is a lack of in said society.
Well, I actually disagree, because I'm a firm believer that you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. And the thing with that is it's like a person, it's like an able-bodied man, it's like a 6'4" able-bodied dude standing around complaining that there are no volunteer firemen, but he's not a volunteer fireman. It's like, dude, I mean, damn, if you think there ain't no volunteer firemen, volunteer, motherfucker.
Yeah,
like
that's what I was kind of conveying to him, like
it's like, like my thing is, when I became a certain age, I always wanted to be a married man. I never wanted to be a bachelor for the rest of my life. And I gave it a try with my children's mother. It did not work out the way I wanted it to work out, but I fully understand why it didn't. If that relationship would have happened in the 50s, it probably would have worked. And you're talking about, and I'm talking about the same exact people. Put in a different time frame, it probably would have worked. And the reason why is because of the simple fact that you have a specific narrative that is being programmed into us. So when you talk about agency, you only have so much agency, if any, because every single thing that you have in our culture is leading us in a specific direction. We watch television. We act like television doesn't affect us. They call it television programming for a reason. You think it's programming in the sense of the show is a program. No, it's a program to urge you to do something.
You do realize that black people watch more TV than anybody else, right?
Of course. And what they watch affects them. Why do you think? Let me tell you something. You've been sitting around watching Different Strokes, Full House, all of these shows that have broken families. The entire time you're growing up with maybe one or two exceptions of intact families. The rest of them are broken families. Some of them don't have a father in the house. Some of them don't have a mother in the house. That affects you in a certain way. Now you have it flat out where you have commercials about women who are going to the doctor because they're pregnant and they ain't even a father in the picture. You got freaking University of Phoenix commercials that have a single mom, and the single mom ain't black, she's white. You know what I'm saying? Why are they showing you this? They're showing you this because they're trying to guide you in a specific direction. And with black people, it's worse. Because when you look at criminal activity, when you go back in the day to the 80s and you look at individuals who engaged in the drug trade and criminal activity, you're looking at individuals who was doing that because they didn't have anything available to them. Now you fast forward to today, you might have an argument that they're doing it because they want to. But why do they want to? Because we have a culture that shows them that's what you do. Be a trap star. That's what you hear in all the music. That's what you see in the television shows and movies and shit. This is enticing and growing people to do certain shit.
So I just want to jump in here and keeping in line with the idea of using as a touchstone that we all know, Alan Roger Curry. So it's okay to be a man about town. That's what they used to call men like Alan Roger Curry, a man about town. So it's okay to be a man about town in Black America so long as you just don't talk about the type of problems that yours truly talks about. If you don't ever talk about it, you could be a man about town, and we being black people will be completely okay with that. Do I have that right?
To be truthfully honest, with all of the out of wedlock children that are being born, all of the fatherless households that's going on in the black community, it is not cool to be a man about town. If nobody else says that, I will say it. It's not cool. We need some goddamn discipline in the black community. Point blank, period. The days of running around.
But in defense of Curry, and he's not alone. I mean, again,
I
just want to say this for the record. The majority, and you and I agree on this, Valdez, the majority of black men are single and childless. Alan Roger Curry is single and childless. 42% of black men. We both agree on that point. Why is him being a man about town and he's not creating any baby mamas and he's entering into associations with black women and presumably other than black women, but we'll focus it to just black women here, of their own free will, freedom of association. Why is that a problem in your eyes with regard to the out of wedlock birth rate situation and lack of marriage situation in Black America, Valdez?
Well, I don't believe that being a man about town is necessarily a bad thing, because I think at any point in life, a lot of us are men about town, whether we're 18, 28, or 38. But my thing is this: be a man about town, okay? Go out there, stick your hoes, and do whatever you want to do. Do whatever you want to do. But you can't, my thing is this: you can't talk about family values if you ain't a family man.
Bingo.
You can't talk about raising decent children if your ass don't have any children. You understand? You can't talk about having a good wife if your ass ain't married, and so on and so forth. That's kind of where I'm
so
at.
we can't talk about crime unless individuals talking about crime were once criminals themselves. You can't talk about drug abuse unless the individuals themselves was like Marion Barry.
Pause right there. No, see, I would actually go as far as say, I propose this: you can't talk about crime, right, unless you're talking about it from the proper context. Because whenever you talk about crime, Obsidian, you sit there and you say, oh, black folks. I'm not worried about black folks. The problem wasn't created with black folks, now was it?
I'm sorry, say that again.
See, and there you go again. You know, pretending like you can't hear. Like,
No, I
am I
didn't hear what you
talking
said.
into a
Please
hearing aid?
repeat, because I want to respond to what you said. So
I said you cannot talk about crime unless you're coming from the proper context.
Okay.
And you personally never come from the proper context. Because you come from the context in which this is a moral issue. Oh, black people are immoral somehow. Now,
I didn't say black people were immoral. I never said black people were immoral.
That's what you're alluding to when you use
No,
adherence of the white man's burden, like Thomas Sowell and Shelby Steele.
That's what you're interpreting.
That's what
I'm saying. So let me be clear.
And now you understand
exactly what I'm talking about, Cerulean. What I said was, insofar as violent crime, I'm not even talking about larceny, theft. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about violent crime, homicide, attempted murder, aggravated assault, rape, crimes like that in Black America, where the number one victims are Black people. I'm saying that a major reason why that is because the perpetrators were not brought up and inculcated with certain bourgeois values and moral teaching. I didn't say all Black people were like that.
So you're saying the bourgeois values are moral?
Yes, they are.
Are they really moral? When we've actually had an interview with someone from a bourgeois community, specifically Prince George's County, who says he sees the same exact thing in his community. So are they really that moral?
So the murder rate, the rate of sexual violence, the rate of attempted murder is just as high in Prince George's County as in New Orleans, New York, or Chicago.
Well, let's go to the UCR, shall we? So we look at UCR and we're seeing that the biggest offenders when it comes to sexual related crimes are white men, not Black men.
It's roughly about 65%.
In fact, per capita, according to the UCR, Black men have the lowest rate of sexual crimes.
If anything, you will get your ass
okay.
in the Black
Okay, I
community.
want to before you guys get too deep into that.
Because what you do is you address things out of context in which you do not provide any in-depth discussion as to how these things come to be. Not like myself or BGS anyway. And so what you end up doing is you're just pushing propaganda because you believe in narrative more than you believe in context.
I'm sorry, say that again.
And there we go again
with
your deflection. Am I talking into a hearing aid?
He says you believe in narrative more than you believe in context.
No, I just have a much simpler view than Cerulean does.
Okay,
well,
I want to answer that.
Well, I actually would say you're half right. you are much simpler. I would I would actually highly contest whether or not you have any view at all.
Well, I want to answer his question before we get to
whatever you want to think, Cerulean. That's fine.
Before we get too in depth into that, before we get too in depth into that, Obsidian asked me a question. I think it was a really important question, so I want to answer it. And this is not specific to Alan Roger Curry. This is just in general. The problem with being a man about town, even if you are not creating, out of wedlock children, is Black men have always had a dark cloud looming over us. And part of that dark cloud, is propaganda, but some of it isn't. And when we live in a day and time where we have a high rate of out of wedlock births, when we have a high rate of fatherless homes, I think the last type of behavior we should be engaging in is being a man about town, especially after a certain age. And
what would that certain age be?
Definitely over 30.
Okay.
Definitely over 30. Because in your teens, you're gonna date. In your 20s, you're gonna date. you know, and as a young man, you definitely want to have your 20s, maybe some of your 30s to get your shit together, you know, do what you need to do as far as an adult. But me personally, I don't believe guys should be 50 and on into those ages, you know, still engaging in a bachelor lifestyle.
And chasing hoes.
And the only reason why I'm saying this, is because we never think about the demoralizing, like we're so angry with black women with what they've done, and they've done a lot. Don't get it twisted. Y'all know I've talked about it at great length. They've done a lot, but we never think about the demoralizing thing that it does to black women when dudes are just fucking and bouncing. We know this. We know that men.
Here in defense of Allen,
I want to talk about that
Allen
too.
and black men like him.
That a little later.
What I would say is, in response to what you just said, Valdez, in defense of Allen and men like black men.
Don't say in defense of Allen. That was not specific. What I would say is that was not specific to Allen. That was just in general.
Have a problem. Yeah, not only do I not have a problem with black men like Allen, I have zero truck with them. I would take it a step further and say that to put the onus of the current out of wedlock birth rate situation on black men like Allen is to basically make them out to be scapegoats. Why? In light of the fact that, number one, we know that the majority of black men are not like that. We know this. And number two, we also know that even those black men who are baby daddies, the majority of them are the most involved dads of all dads in America. So why can't we go where the source of the problem is? This small percentage of Desmond Hatchett type brothers and the black women who love them. Why can't we do that?
We can. I've made videos about it. But here's the problem. One doesn't
referencing Alan Roger Curry type.
One doesn't. First of all, I didn't reference Alan Roger Curry. You guys were talking about Alan Roger Curry. I'm talking about men who engage in bachelor behavior. Now, just because Alan Roger Curry engages in bachelor behavior does not mean I'm talking about him.
No, okay. What I'm saying is
because when you do that, hold on, Obsidian. When you do that, it makes it appear that I'm making a direct attack at him, and I am not. Okay. What I am saying.
No, nobody's attacking Alan Roger.
Okay.
Nobody.
I just want to make that clear because I don't have any issues with that. Because I don't have any issues with that. Nobody is. All right. But I
just use him as an example that we all can easily see and identify.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know Alan Roger Curry's complete. I don't know the ins and outs of his lifestyle. I don't know why he chose to remain single. I have absolutely no idea. So I can't speak to that. However,
well, that tracks very well, but doesn't that track very well with what we just got finished saying earlier with the Tom Likas discussion? You argued that black men, when they do marry, and that's pretty rare, to be frank, when they do marry, they overwhelmingly marry black women. We all agree on that point. That's a statement of fact.
85, 86%.
You suggested the simple parsimonious reason for that was because black men just happen to be attracted to and or love black women. I conceded your point. I said, yes, that's a possibility. That's possible. Okay. I then offered another parsimonious reason, which got a lot of conversation. But the problem in both cases is that we don't know for certain why black men, when they do marry black women, because we have no evidence, no research, no surveys to turn to. And moreover, we could say the same thing about bachelors like me or Alan Roger Curry or Hill Harper or anybody else. There has never been any study or survey asking black men, why are you a bachelor?
Well, there doesn't have to be a study for that per se, for the simple fact that past performance is an indicator of future performance. Black men have always chosen to be with black women in larger numbers than black men who have decided to date interracially. And they even do that still to this day, even though they are fully capable of dating whatever type of woman they want. Okay, and there are so many reasons for that I could go over, but it would be kind of pointless because I don't see it changing anytime soon because of the simple fact that people like their own. That's the reality. Every group that you look at, there's going to be more people who date from out of their race than outside of their race. And the reason why is because you want somebody that looks like you. That's just human nature. You know, not specifically like you, but the same tone, same culture.
Most of us do.
Same, you know, that's human nature. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
But the thing with this bachelor lifestyle, I'm not saying there's something wrong with it. If you find yourself in a situation where you can't find the person who's suitable for you, I understand. You know what I'm saying? Now, the reason why I brought up the premise of picking a woman and being with the woman is because I was basing that upon your assertion that the Black community is in dire straits. And what I'm trying to say, the premise that I'm trying to make is that if we are in a situation where the Black community is in dire straits, then we have to give up certain luxuries. That's the logic that I was using. However, if dudes want to go on the basis of, well, you know, I'm not having any children out of wedlock, I'm protecting myself to make sure that I don't get any chicks pregnant, and you know, I'm just doing my thing right now. You got to realize that's just part of the problem. Because one thing that I know for certain, and I'm going back to human nature, men are much more men are not monogamous by nature. Okay. Nope. Men have to actually make
men or women are not monogamous by nature.
I would argue that women are much more monogamous.
Well,
I would argue that they're much more monogamous.
The evidence in terms of human history and the evidence in terms of just biology, women in general, just women, period, are not anatomically designed to just have one lover throughout life.
Well, the thing about it is, here's the thing. Science has already proven, and there's studies that prove that men are much more subjective to something that's called the Coolidge effect, where if they've been with women for longer than 2 years, they will certainly get an urge to be with a different woman, and that's to populate the earth. Now, if you really look at it, it's much more difficult biologically for women to not be monogamous because of the fact that they have to carry a baby for 9 months. So
that's true.
Of course,
but here's the thing, though, Valdez. Here's the thing that you didn't consider. Question: why do women engage in casual sex?
Why do women? Because they're monkey branching. Hypergamy. That's why they engage in casual sex.
That's one reason.
Because they're playing the numbers game. They're trying to get the best mate that they can get.
That's one reason. So I have another question. For you. Why is it that prostitution is the oldest profession known in humankind?
Because that's a lie. The oldest profession has always been agriculture, but you know, if you want to believe nonsensical drivel like prostitution is the oldest profession alive.
Well, you're
exactly who I thought you were.
Well, the reason prostitution is okay. First of all, you got to understand one thing about prostitution. Prostitution, you're looking at two different sexes. You're looking at the male sex, the female sex. Up until recently, what was a definite profession for women?
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
Up until recently, what was a definite profession for women?
I don't know. What you tell me?
There isn't one except prostitution. Because technically, if you look at the way the world is built and the way the world is designed, there isn't shit men want from women except that, for the most part. So if you don't have something, men have all sorts of professions and all sorts of trades because everybody needs what men do. We need men to build buildings. We need men to build highways. We need men to fly planes. We need men. And I'm not saying that women can't do these things, but traditionally men have done these things in great larger numbers than women have, especially more recently.
So I'm accepting your premise. I'm conceding your argument. My only point is that women, and I'm not saying all women do it, and I'm not saying all women do it all the time, but there is ample evidence that proves that women will engage in short-term, non-monogamous, casual sex.
They will. But let me ask you this.
That's been proven.
But let me ask you this. If a woman had a choice, if a choice was presented to her, and I use the example of, I use an anecdote, the fucking movie Pretty Woman. If a woman has a choice to be a prostitute on a street corner, fucking to make her living, or marrying her white knight, which one is she going to choose?
Marrying her white knight and doing what else now?
I said, which one would she choose? Would
marrying the white knight or marrying the white knight?
Would she would choose marrying the white knight because of the simple fact that has the most security.
Well, I mean, we all saw that in the famous movie Pretty Woman, right? That was the whole premise of the picture, right?
That was the whole premise. But see, what it does is it indicates something about female nature. Even if nobody wants to accept the premise of that movie, it says something about female nature. Women have always sought out resources and security. So
sorry, y'all.
If a woman has a choice, if a woman has an option between an unstable lifestyle, which being a prostitute is very unstable, and marrying a man who has resources, she's gonna pick that. That's why I say that women are more monogamous. It's not just based on sex. Okay. You see what I'm saying? It's not just based on the physical act of sex, the reason why women are much more monogamous. See, men, on the other hand, there is no scenario like that for men. Do you see what I'm saying? Because men don't necessarily need women for resources in their livelihood, and they never have. So
not unless they're broke.
Say what?
I said not unless they're broke and starving.
Well,
that's called a homosexual.
Even when he's broke, Cerulean, like I know, even when a brother is broke, he will still have 2 or 3 women that he mess with. You know what I'm saying? That he'll crash at this house, crash at that house. You know what I'm saying? Even in that scenario. So it's drastically different. And the whole reason, let me bring the whole point home. The whole reason why I'm saying this is because regardless of how women behave due to culture, due to westernized culture, there is something in women that is biological in nature that cannot be circumvented because of something that has happened recently. You can't get rid of millions of years of evolution in a few years of feminism or things of that nature. Women will always want to be with one man who has the ability to give them everything they need and protect them. And what I'm trying to say is, when you have a society where we're trying to teach women to be more promiscuous, teach women to be more like guys, you have what you have now, which is, would you agree or would you not agree, Obsidian, that now in this day and age, women are the most unhappy than they've ever been in the history of the world, across the board, across all race lines?
In the Western world, as long as records have been kept and recorded on human happiness, yeah, that's true.
And the reason why is because of what's going on. The reason why is because we are moving away from the nuclear family. And the further away we move from the nuclear family, the more you have women that are demoralized. They may not come out and say it. They may even engage in it, but I guarantee you, these chicks that's running around here fucking random dudes and shit, I guarantee you they don't feel good about themselves.
They don't.
Well, one, we're moving away from the nuclear family because it was a GMO pig that was held up by policy anyway. It's not even a naturally occurring thing. It's actually only specific to a very specific group of Eastern Europeans, in which the Industrial Revolution hit them first before we adopted it here. And because we adopted the Industrial Revolution, we only follow pattern to an adaptive family structure, in which we have significant evidence of knowing to have worked with the Eastern European. And that's how you had the GMO pig that we know now as the nuclear family here in American society, which is falling apart because it was a GMO pig. It wasn't meant for you. You're already having a more natural, more organic type of family structure with extended family, which eroded that extended family, which was the basis of a successful community. What you got was the industrial revolution in exchange for for your extended family, which is what really built successful Black communities.
All right, I want to
And
push back on that. But before I do, I just want to throw it back to Valdez real quick. I would ask him, in light of everything that he said, how would you then explain cryptic ovulation in the human female?
Cryptic ovulation. Define that term for me, please.
In other words, if you look at the closest animals on planet Earth, the closest ones to human beings are primates. Okay, so if you study the primate societies, baboons, chimpanzees, and so forth, we know when the female is in heat. We can observe this with dogs, cats, etc. We can observe when the females are in heat, right? However, when it comes to the human female, we can never be certain when she's in heat. Why is that?
Well, let me ask you this.
I would disagree.
Well, let me ask you this. Do chimpanzees pay rent? Do chimpanzees work for a living?
Yeah, there's you see, here's the thing. When you look at
chimpanzees live in urban areas?
When you look at primates, or you look at other animals, you're looking at when you're looking at those different things, you're looking at something entirely different. Human beings have a drastically different frontal lobe. So we're actually able to do certain things. We're able to we're able to actually override our instincts and certain things about ourselves. So of course you're not going to be able to, spot and see a woman that's in heat. Every once in a while you will. I've seen women in heat. I
want to throw this at the fellas here on the panel and everybody in the chat room and whatnot, and people who will be listening to this, later on in the week or whatnot. I want to throw this all at you. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but an actual study has been done to determine if men can determine when a woman is in her ovulating phase of her menstrual cycle. The study's actually been done on this. What they did was they went to a strip club, right? And they got the women that work there. They went and used the female strippers who were not ovulating, and they put that against the group of female strippers who were ovulating. Let them, go out and do their thing, ride the pole, lap dances, and all the rest of it. Would it surprise you to know that the women who were ovulating got, like, I think it's something like 3 or 4 times as many tips as the women who were not?
Of course, because it's still there. We're just not we're not cognitive of it. It's still there. Like for instance, I don't really want to.
They're probably emitting some degree of attractive hormones too at that particular time.
Yeah, like I don't want to get too personal, but every single relationship I've been in, right before my partner got into that ovulation stage, I got horny as fuck. So it's still there. It hasn't went anywhere. You know what I'm saying? It's just presenting itself in a different way. So like we still have certain instincts. It's just we have a lot more distractions to not
they
pay
also
attention
determine
to those
now
instincts.
this is another good thing too. And tests have been done on this, empirical tests have been done on this. There are very subtle cues that most women, we're not talking about, this is a generalization, so there are going to be exceptions, of course, but generally speaking, most women, when they ovulate, they dress differently than when they're not. Most women, when they're ovulating, they wear more perfume than when they're not. In other words, they present themselves as more attractive to the opposite sex when they're ovulating than when they're not.
Of course, because the entire point, what we call a woman trapping, a man, that's what women have traditionally done. The only difference is in this day and age, when a guy gets a woman pregnant, they don't feel obligated to her. They don't feel obligated to raise that child. But traditionally, when women went out and they met a guy and they messed around and had sex with a guy and got pregnant, you know, the male felt obligated to raise his child and to, you know what I'm saying? We went from being in a certain state to being in a whole nother state. See, it's not just women that's on some extra shit when it comes to feminism. It's us too.
That's the socialization of it.
We're on some shit too. Because
traditionally, traditionally, not to cut you off, but traditionally, if you got a girl pregnant, not only were you obligated to take care of that child, and in most cases, you were obligated to marry that woman.
Exactly.
So, yeah, you had to do that as well.
That rule still stands in my house. So
it's accountability. It's accountability. And
a number of people in the chat room have been asking questions about this ovulation question. So I just want to go ahead and try to answer the questions. Felix the Observer says, but he said ovulation was cryptic. Then he proceeds to decrypt and identify different behaviors. I'm confused. And Kendra Davis says, and why is ovulation cryptic at all? This has been proven by science. What I want to just simply say, my point in bringing all this up was, in other primate species, and indeed in other mammalian species on the planet, it's very obvious when the female is in heat. It's very obvious. We know with certain primates, you know, their behind is bright red and all the rest of it. With women, it's the empirical tests and studies have proved is that there are very subtle cues that indeed some men, and I would argue probably a relative minority of men, are thus out among women who are ovulating versus women who are not. And it's something that's not obvious. It's something that there's a lot of hit and miss for me. You just have to ask, why is that? And I'm saying the reason why that may be is because women may not be as monogamous as we have been previously led to believe. Maybe cryptic ovulation in women is a mechanism that allows women to, you know, as we so often say in the manosphere, alpha fucks beta bucks.
Or maybe it's only cryptic to those who women find no interest in.
Exactly.
Monkey branching, hypergamy.
Way that it's well, I mean, it's only cryptic to men who women have no interest in.
Exactly.
That's a possibility too. That's a possibility too. See, all of these things are being studied, and you have to keep in mind, everybody in the chat and everybody listening and whatnot. You have to keep in mind, you know, evolutionary psychology is a very new science. It's only been around since the early 80s. So it's not even a half a century old yet. So we're just now starting to get a handle on all this stuff. And more, you know, research and stuff is being done all the time. I interviewed Professor David Buss, author of the book The Evolution of Desire, Strategies in Human Mating. He was, you know, he's like considered one of the founding fathers of the evolutionary psychology movement in America worldwide. They're just now starting to study all of these things. And it's fascinating stuff. Really, really fascinating stuff.
Do you know how you know women are the reason you know women are monogamous or more monogamous than men is because of the imprint, which a lot of people try to dismiss. But I can tell you right now, being a person that has been in a relationship with a woman who had a child by another dude previous to me, that fucking imprint is real.
Yep.
I can almost guarantee you that any dude who has went through the scenario of dating a woman that already had a child, like for instance, I'll give you a prime example. Nobody's really going to study this because most scientists stay away from this type of shit, but it really needs to be studied. Let's say for argument's sake, a woman has children by 5 men. I guarantee you that first guy, she thinks in her mind there's still a chance she can be with him. But that fifth guy, she could give a fuck about him.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's how you know that monogamy amongst women is a real thing.
Oh, I'm not refuting that. I'm not. Let's just be clear on this. I'm not refuting that there is a preference among women, for that matter, among men for monogamy. I'm not denying that. What I'm saying is that the very fact that casual sex, cuckoldry, hypergamy, monkey branching, alpha fucks beta bucks, the very fact that these phenomena exist says to me that both men and women are optimized anatomically and biologically for a dual track mating strategy. That's all I'm saying.
No, what that is, see, here's the thing with that. You're okay. There's a couple of things that's at play when you're talking about this. The first thing is this whole concept of casual sex. This is a learned behavior that has been taught to us in Western society.
Yeah, see, one thing that's missing is once
You're
again
saying
we're talking
casual sex didn't exist anywhere else except in the Western world.
No, one thing that we're missing out of this is context. You're talking because this conversation started off with black people addressing black dysfunction, and you're addressing it without context. So now we're talking in this circular pattern about evolutionary psychology, in which black folks have not had an uninterrupted period in this country of cultural development in which we can actually establish our own evolutionary psychology.
True.
Mm-hmm.
True.
And so everything.
So you're arguing. So let me get this straight, Cerulean. So you're saying that if black people, were it not for the intervention of white people, black people would have evolved their own evolutionary psychology. That's what you're saying.
Well, what I'm saying is that we already had our own evolutionary psychology that was interrupted by the onset of slavery and imperialism.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. So how do you explain?
Because we have been re-socialized to be American, these problems are not exclusively to blacks. These are actually American problems. Whenever you bring it back to this,
so how do you explain? All right. So how do you explain black people, say, in Ethiopia? How do you explain that?
There's no part of this world that has not been touched by white imperialism. The British flag has flown over every single damn continent.
In fact, when America was established, it was supposed to be a satellite for the British.
Yeah, there's no part.
Yeah, but Ethiopia was
the behavior, the socialization of
You said what?
Ethiopia has been an independent society for thousands of years.
But it has been affected by white imperialism.
Okay, how so?
Yeah, I mean, after the invasion of Italy, with the help of the League of Nations, which was the precursor.
No, they fought the Italians off. The Italians attempted to do what Britain did and what France and Germany and whatnot did to other societies in Africa. They attempted to do that. The Ethiopians fought. They ran the Italians out of there.
Well, let's talk about what the Ethiopians did, what Black Americans have not done. What they do, they fought them off. What does it take to go to war? It takes a substantial amount of logistics and resources, in which Ethiopia controlled its own. Before the invasion of Italy, under the attempted invasion under Menelik II, Menelik II originally fought him off, and then what happened was a guy named Mussolini had this bright idea, realizing the sins of the past were not going to be repeated. He went to the League of Nations to get help, and they indeed helped him.
Well, let me ask this. Which Ethiopia are you talking about? Are you talking about current Ethiopia? Obsidian?
Well, today, of course, we know we have a bifurcated Ethiopia. You got Eritrea and you got Ethiopia. So there's that civil war and whatnot. We had that. I'm talking about.
Give me a starting point.
You're talking about the Italians. So you're looking at what that would have been the 1930s, 1930s, 1940s, circa World War II?
No, I'm not talking about the Italians. I'm talking about the premise of what you were saying. You were saying, well, how about Ethiopia? Give me a starting frame for Ethiopia, because I'm assuming you're referring to dysfunctional behavior.
Well, I mean, I'm following Cerulean's argument that were it not for white intervention into Black society, starting here in the United States, and then we can expand that to Africa, which is, you know, has been colonized by whites of varying stripe. Were it not for that, we would develop our own evolutionary psychology. So my response to that is, all right, so how do we explain Ethiopia?
Okay, so you said, how do we explain Ethiopia? So what you're saying is, at some point in Ethiopia, there has been some sort of change in Ethiopia.
What I'm suggesting
that's what I'm asking.
That evolutionary psychology, in this case, the idea of a dual track mating strategy, long and short term for both male and female, would play itself out in Ethiopia as well.
Well, here's the thing.
No, that's a false supposition, because for one, Ethiopian nationalism sets its own dictates, which socializes the people to a more traditionalist setting.
Here's
the for every woman, and for every woman a man. But here in Western society, you have not had your own uninterrupted period of cultural or social development.
Well, see, there's one thing. Hold on a
second. Let me stop right there. So, really, and you're saying that there was one woman for every one man in Ethiopian society? Is that what you're saying?
No, but hold on. You're going into something else. And here's the thing about Ethiopia. Ethiopia, if you're arguing that Ethiopia has not had hasn't been interrupted culturally, because you know,
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I brought up the British colonizing Africa, and you said, well, they didn't get to Ethiopia. They don't have to. And you know the reason why they don't have to? Because in America, the descendants of slaves who created hip hop culture, who, if you want to argue, wouldn't you say that Black people in America influenced Black people all over the entire world through hip hop culture?
Among other things, it did it through jazz before that.
All different. See, here's the thing: Black people in America are the standard for certain cultural behavior, and the reason why is because America is the modern day Egypt. America is the tone. We set the tone. So regardless of whether a country like Ethiopia has been colonized and affected by white imperialism, it doesn't matter, because the people who were affected by white imperialism are teaching them.
Well, now they can.
So you're saying that Black Americans
don't have to
are having a cultural impact on Ethiopians by way of our kind of transmitting our,
what do you think
white
imprint
by way of hip hop culture itself.
Black people are having a cultural influence on the entire world. That's what I'm saying. The entire world. You got Asians. I seen a video the other day with Asians singing soul music and sounding just like Black people.
Especially when you talk about America, and I'm with Brother Cerulean. I always am. The problems that Black society have in America, I can't see them as exclusively Black problems. They are American problems because we are in America. A lot of the things that we as Black people have adapted, we have adapted this shit from white folks, man. We have picked a lot of the shit up. A lot of the shit that goes on with us as Black people, man, we have picked this shit up from white people. We may not have picked 100% of it up from white people, but we picked up a whole hell of a lot of it from white people.
Of course.
And what has
and here's the thing about that, Brother Xavier. I'm glad you said that, because as much as we love hip hop, as much as we love the culture that we have created for ourselves, this de facto culture, that culture has our dysfunction all up in it. See what I'm saying?
So let me ask this question. Let me come at it this way, because it's clear.
Let me just say this. Our dysfunction is intertwined in that culture that we created, and that culture does affect the entire world. Like I said, you have Asians that are singing, you know, that Motown Philly Boys to Men type style of singing. I seen a video the other day with Asians singing like that. I've seen videos of Asians in this day and age that are perming their hair so that they can get fades and get hairstyles like black people.
Okay. There's everything.
Yeah, there's all sort. They're wearing weaves. There's all sorts of shit. You even see the Africans. There's a documentary, it's an excellent documentary called "God Grew Tired of Us," and it shows a lot of the boys from the Sudan who actually were affected. In fact, they were picking boys at random. These are the boys that walked from I forget which country it was. I think it was Sudan to another country because they were being killed in a genocide. And some of these brothers actually were able to come to America, and they came to America.
Look at the video "Unforgettable" by French Montana.
Yeah, but they showed, check this out. They showed these brothers come to America, and they followed them for like a year just to see how they would transition. And one of the older brothers, he said he noticed there's a change in these brothers. And he started looking, and some of the brothers hadn't even been in America for a fucking year. And they were already walking around with the big doofy chains, sagging their pants and shit.
Already Americanized.
So we have a huge effect on the entire world. You know what I'm saying? So,
okay. All right. So let me ask you all this then, in light of what you all said, because the general consensus among you brothers seems to be that there is no independent black identity, if you will, outside of white interference, either directly or indirectly. That seems to be the consensus. So let me ask you this.
Well, first of all,
let me ask you this.
I think there's influence. There is some white influence on black people.
Okay, fair enough. So let me ask you this. Yeah, let me ask you this. So what would it take for black people to have a truly black way of looking at the world? What would that entail? What would it take?
Can I answer that question?
Go ahead, and I'll take a crack at it.
A couple of generations after there isn't a white face on the planet. That's what it would take.
Well, first of all, I would say this. Well, first of all, when you're talking about black, what you're talking about is a forced identitarianism. No, did you choose to be called black, or did someone choose the word black to describe you? Did you choose that identity, or was it given to you? So when you talk about black, you're talking about forced identitarianism.
Cerulean, you're always giving away my damn topics for the next day. God damn it. You're always ahead. God damn it.
Well, to answer,
Cerulean is always answering questions that I want to ask like tomorrow.
To answer Obsidian's question, and I'll use the word black for lack of a better phrase, there is no independent black identity. There are remnants of it. And it comes from before white imperialism. The moment, see, this is the part that really is disturbing, and it bothers me because we live in a day and time where there's this whitewashing that's been going on. And the whitewashing I'm talking about is not in the traditional form. It's trying to erase the evils that white people have done, or ignore them or dismiss them. And the problem with that is when you ignore something that traumatic, because that is a traumatic event that has happened on this planet, the way white people have basically spread across the earth and conquered and did whatever they could to gain power in whatever way that they could. They've affected everything. You understand? And it would be no different. Let me just go ahead and make this 100% clear. It would be no different if it were the Asians. It would be no different if it were black people that went across the earth and affected every culture. They have affected every single culture in some way. There's only a couple of cultures that they haven't influenced that much. You look at China, and you look at how they've been closed for so long. They're fighting against that shit. You see what I'm saying? They're fighting against that shit to try to maintain their culture and maintain what makes them them. But we haven't been able to do that. They chopped Africa up and divided it up. And so, and you said Ethiopia was able to resist. That's, look at how big the continent of Africa is. That's just one
Well,
out
actually,
of.
they weren't ready. Actually, they weren't able to resist completely because after the invasion with the help of the League of Nations, they actually did go through a period of cultural degradation.
Yeah, and see
It's
right
interesting
now.
that you bring up China, Valdez, because you're right. For I mean, like the vast majority of China's history, you know, they had a lot of internal strife, but for most of its history, all the way up into the present day, you know, by present day I mean communist China, Chairman Mao, etc. They've been a closed society. I mean, they did not want to deal with the outside world, and not just whites from the Western world. I mean they didn't want to deal with nobody
They did not want to deal
outside
with
of
the
China,
outside world.
and they
Do you know
effectively
why
resisted.
China hasn't been conquered? Do you want to know why China hasn't been conquered? Because every time that Western society has tried to conquer China, it has always been a monolith. Has Africa always been a monolith? Has Africa ever been a monolith?
No.
Okay, so you're talking about one monolithic people versus a polyolithic people, which is why they were able to carve up Africa, but they weren't able to carve up China.
Yeah, the Chinese have tried their best to keep the Americans, or what did they refer to them as? The Quilo, I think that's what they call them. Japanese call them gaijins. Like, they've been trying their best to keep Asian culture Asian as much as they possibly
Japan
can.
is a different kettle of fish.
Well, yeah,
Japan is very different from China in that, you know, you look at the last of the Shogun period in 19th century and all the rest of it. Japan understood that it needed, you know, to modernize itself in order to be a viable society moving into the 20th century. This is before even World War II.
well, of course they.
So,
I mean, they would
they,
have to.
They wanted Western ideas up to a point. But they incorporated certain elements of Western thinking, that is to say white Western thinking, up to a point, but then they wanted to retain their cultural thing, like Valdez pointed out, the whole Gaijin piece and all the rest of it. So it's a bit different than China.
It's different because they don't have the numbers, and the thing about it is the reason but see, even though they've allowed certain things to come into Japan and allowed certain things to come out of Japan and be part of Western culture, they've still done everything in their power to maintain their culture. And see, the difference between them and us, and this is another reason why we deal. In fact, you know, as dysfunctional as Black people are, I still give Black people credit, because truth be told, we were broken down to the bare minimum of civilization.
And we're still here.
And we're still maintaining to some degree.
Yeah,
okay, when you break like all of these different cultures that come to America to be prosperous and things of that nature, they've had uninterrupted culture, so they can maintain better. We've been interrupted, not to mention the fact that we've been interrupted. The majority of us is walking around with several different tribes in our genetics. We didn't even know where the fuck we came from. You know what I'm saying? Who knows what conflicts came about because of that? You feel what I'm saying? Because
I want to say this because we coming around to like the last 5, 6, 7 minutes of the show.
Okay.
I want to first and foremost, I want to thank Brother Obsidian for coming up here and taking a lot of heat. You know, I appreciate that, brother. You know, full disclosure, I've been trying to get Brother Obsidian up here for a while, y'all. So it's not like I just kind of conjured it up because of the controversy that's going on between him and BGS. I've been trying to get Brother Obsidian on here for a while, but he has been ducking out on a brother. He finally came. So that's I just want to put that out there. You know what I'm saying? That this wasn't just something I just went after him because of the controversy with the master teacher. I've been trying to get him on for a while. So I want to thank him for coming on. I want to thank the other brothers as well for coming on. But I want to say this before we go. Now, I feel that with Black with black people. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, a lot of us on YouTube and the internet, we give a lot of black women heat. We give other black men heat. And me, myself, I'm included too. I'm include my black ass too. Well, that's why I say we give a lot of people heat. And I think a lot of the problems that go on in black society is resentment. And when I say resentment, what I mean is this. A lot of us come up, and like Brother Obsidian said, you know, the illegitimacy rate hovers somewhere between 70-75%, some places 77%, in the inner cities as high as 80%. So when a lot of us, especially when like 8.99 million of us are living at the poverty line and below it, what happens? We grow up in a household where our mama has had 5 or 6 different boyfriends, and we have 5 or 6 different siblings, right? So we grow up, a lot of us grow up in poverty. We grow up not eating. We grow up with our toes hanging out our shoes. We grow up with not wearing good clothes, going to horrible schools, and all that kind of shit. So what that builds up in a lot of black people is resentment. Because to be honest with you, I think a lot of little kids, when they growing up and they watching this, they wish somebody had came in there and married their mama. A lot of these girls that grow up, I think they wish a lot of dudes had came in there and married mom. Why? Because even if the dude didn't make a lot of money, if he only made $20,000 a year, $30,000 a year, guess what? That would have been $20,000, $30,000 more for them to live on. Maybe there would have been Christmas presents under the tree. Maybe there would have been new sneakers for school. Maybe they would have been able to get out of the ghetto. And I think a lot of black people grow up with that resentment. Therefore, they get angry when you talk about people who are in that same predicament. Because I always say, dysfunction is close to you. The reason why we get so mad because somebody talks about black women's weight is because our mama is fat, our sister is fat, our cousin is fat, our daughter are fat, our girlfriends are fat. The reason why we get mad when we talk about a brother who sells crack for a living and went to jail because our uncle did it, our father did it, our brother did it, we know somebody who did it. See, with black people, we have the dysfunction is so close to us. It's so close to us that we can't distance ourselves from it. And I think a lot of us have a lot of inner resentment that we haven't dealt with. And we carry that resentment from childhood all the way up to adulthood, and we still don't deal with it. Now, mind you, a lot of the people that I listen to the most are up on this panel right now. My man Valdez, Brother Obsidian, I listen to you a lot. Brother Cerulean, I hang on his every word. I write down most of the shit he says. Okay, you come look in this little studio here, you see a lot of notes with Cerulean on the top of them. But at the same time, we as black men, we are always going to disagree on some points. But the point I want to make to you, Brother Obsidian, is that at some time we have to have some degree of code about what we will do, what we won't do, what we will say, what we won't say, what we will attack, what we won't attack. And I will tell you, I like your commentary. I'm subscribed to your channel. I don't subscribe to people's shit that I don't listen to. But we have to learn to follow some degree of coding, my brother. If the coding is only very slight, and you're not off the hook for talking about BGS's daughter. I just want to let you know that too. But I'm still going to listen to your shit. And I still think that you are a bright brother, even though I disagree with some of the shit you say, just like I disagree with a lot of shit that a lot of people say. But I tell you this, with all the different opinions that are out within the manosphere or the YouTube sphere or whatever you want to call it, when us brothers start to come to the middle, when all of us can meet somewhere in the middle, that's when shit is going to change. I want to say thank you to my mods. Y'all did a good job tonight. I want to thank you to everybody for stopping by tonight. All the people, the donations was coming in. I want to thank all of y'all. Y'all know who y'all are. I couldn't go through them all, y'all, so I'm going to go through them tomorrow in the morning. And you know, you're going to get a special little email from me for your contribution. As always, once again, I want to thank Brother Obsidian for coming through and hanging out with us. You got a lot of guts, brother. You got a lot of guts. You always stand your ground. That's one thing I respect about you. I want to thank Brother Valdez, Brother Cerulean, Brother BJ Allen D, also Brother Faulkner and Brother Samuels for jumping on the panel for a little while tonight. Make sure y'all tune in tomorrow, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, where the Unicorn 4 TLOT will be live and direct. Tomorrow's subject will be what is black. Lady Ming, Lady Kendra, Lady Cats, and Lady Classic. That's 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, right here on the old YouTube page of TPOT. And don't forget to stop by the website www.don'teventryitit.wikifoundry.com, and you can catch us on Prophet of Thought series at Facebook, and stop by the TPOT bandwagon on Facebook, and also stop by the Prophet of Thought series Facebook fan page. You can also catch us on Instagram, WhatsApp, and that's right, we got a Twitter now, y'all, too. That's at TPOT Media. I got these people in here. I want all of y'all to go and follow TPOT Media tonight, god damn it, or I'll come haunt you in your sleep. That's at TPOT Media on Twitter. Make sure you stop by. Once again, I want to thank everybody for coming through, and I want to thank the guests of honor for stopping by, Brother Obsidian Ali. And
thank you, Brother Xavier. I had a really nice time this evening.
Oh, absolutely.
Great,
I just want to say this to the brothers before we peel out. It was a lot more civil than I expected it to be. I expected to be some, to quote the master teacher, some mud wrestling, but there was no mud wrestling tonight. I had got in contact with my boy Valdez. I was like, I need you there, and I expected a little mud wrestling, but it was okay, but there was none. Everybody kind of, did their thing, and everybody remained respectful, and I want to thank all you brothers for that as well. You have my respect just for that alone. So with that, I will leave you with 3 words, my brothers and sisters. Like I always do, open your minds, and we out of here, y'all.
All right. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Peace, folks.
The prophet